for the teachers, for the students of that school.
Matt, thanks for inviting me today. I welcome an opportunity anytime to talk about our kids in our school and ways that we can improve the educational experience for the kids at the high school. I guess maybe the best way to frame where we are in the process is start with a mission statement that the high school staff has just developed. It's the first step in our accreditation process at the high school, and it's the first standard and the most important standard. And I can honestly say to you, they've really put together a very fine mission statement. It talks about what we value as a group of educators for kids at the high school. And when the visiting team comes in October of 2003, they're going to look at our building and our program and our staff and the community and respond to a basic question, and that question is going to be, how well does everything that's going on at Reading Memorial High School do in supporting the mission statement of that high school? And I think what they're going to do is, if they were to walk into the building right now, they would say the building doesn't do a good job of supporting that mission. They would see different sized classrooms, so in some rooms with 25 or 26 kids, there's more than enough room. You have classrooms that are 1.5 times the size of what they need to be. And then right next door, they're going to see a room where the kids are packed in like sardines, okay? They would see electrical systems that don't support what teachers in the 21st century need to do for kids. Plugs that don't work, not enough plugs, lighting systems that aren't conducive to the use of technology. They're going to see aesthetics for kids that are not good. Then they're going to walk around and they're going to talk to kids about what they see as issues. The kids are going to talk about bathrooms that are closed because they don't work anymore. They will ask our maintenance people, and they'll say they don't work because behind the walls and in the grounds, because they were cast iron back in 1952, those pipes have actually rotted out, causing us to close bathrooms because the waters, if you flush, it just basically goes behind walls and in the ground because they're just beyond repair at this point. They'd go in, they'd take a look at our technology that we supply kids. They'd see we have a number of technology labs at the high school, and what is happening right now is the technology that is in there is very old and very out of date, and no town in the Commonwealth can really keep up with the pace of technological advances. But no school budget can support that. But we are so far behind, and we're going to get healthy with a project like this all at once technologically, and then we get a little bit ahead of the curve and can fight what is an insurmountable uphill battle right now in the area of technology. Be able to do things with distance learning and collaborating within a building right now that doesn't have an intercom system that works. Teachers can't talk to each other. Parents can't get in touch with teachers easily without going through a set of departmental phones. There's no way for a parent to immediately get to a teacher. There's no way for teachers to leave homework assignments on taped recorded messages for parents in the call-in boxes. There's no way for a parent to call the school and talk to an English teacher about their son or daughter who had a particularly difficult time with an assignment and they need a little bit more direction, a little bit more help, or talk about a tough situation at home and seek out the advice and counsel of the teachers that we have. And, you get also to teachers being very discouraged with the workplace in terms of where they, you go up to in the top area of C building as far away from our boilers as possible. You're right, Matt. In the middle of the winter, it's very likely that there's going to be a day that they're going to, or days where the classroom is going to be in the low 50s. And if they're down in A building, which is very close to the boiler, and over the classrooms that are over the boiler, they can be 85, 90 degrees. I mean, the other day I was walking through the school with people from the building committee, and we walked into a couple of those rooms down in A building. It was like a blast furnace. And that's what our kids experience. I mean, a kid at the high school, and we got great kids. We have great kids. I mean, that's a given. And we need to do better by them. okay? Our kids go on and do whatever they want to do because they get a great education. But, a kid that first period has a class with, in Hal's Cross room at the front of the building. If it's a small classroom, it's centrally located, shouldn't have any problem. If he goes second period out to down to the A building to take a shop class with Bob Ward or right over it, he's liable to sit in the winter with 85-degree temperatures in a classroom. 6 or 8 different kinds of computers that we've jerry-rigged together to keep working. And second period, he has to go up to C building. There's no good way to get between A building and C building, and we funnel all our kids through 2 5-foot doors, up ramps that aren't don't meet handicap regulations, so kids with wheelchairs have issues. He goes up to Linda Rossi's class in C building, and she's sending her kids back to their lockers to get their coats because it's very cold, or asking me about can she move her classroom to another part of the building, Third period, they go back down to A building and repeat it all over again. And if it's a young lady and she goes into the girls' locker room to change, she can change there, and then run out in 10-degree weather or whatever, the rain or the sleet or whatever. And while the boy counterparts, they can walk outside maybe a much shorter distance and go across the way into a locker room, and they change there and have gym class, and they get dressed again, and they just walk across, and they don't have nearly the effect of the weather. And the next period, they might be in a writing lab that, again, is, we've got 4 or 5 computers that are down because we don't have the budgets. It's that kind of an environment the kids have, okay? But education occurs, and occurs very well at the high school. Kids are getting serviced well by a really very, very dedicated group of teachers. And I'm concerned that I'm going to keep those teachers. I'm concerned that, I can't pay teachers more. There's a negotiated agreement, and I know the school committee does as well as they can by our teachers, and the teachers work hard to get everything that they deserve for the quality job that they do. But at some point, when teachers are faced with an environment that they don't see as very inviting, and does not offer them the kinds of resources they need in their classrooms, in this day and age, with the way the teaching workforce is very mobile, we stand the threat to lose teachers to go to other communities with better facilities and better equipment. So this is something, my own belief is that, a personal belief is something that is long overdue, and we're living on borrowed time. So that's where I stand on the issue.
That's great. Thanks. As many know, this process has been going on for a while, and people have known for a while that the high school needs to be renovated. The Reading School Building Committee has been looking at this issue for years, and Rich is now going to talk about the process and how this question got on the ballot, and specifically what does the question say and what is it going to do when folks vote yes on question 1.
Thanks, Matt. As Matt said, the School Building Committee's been at this for about 6 years. To date, the town has contracted 2 separate feasibility studies with 2 architectural firms, and the Building Committee has thoroughly reviewed those feasibility studies. We've looked at 8 optional schemes for the high school to date. What we've realized over the discussions over the past year is that we need to take this to the next step. This is a very large, a very complex project, a very costly project, and a very difficult project to conceive. And we believe that a simple feasibility study is not enough to explain a project of this magnitude to the voters so they can make an intelligent decision. We need to explore more options. We need to fully explain a solution to the high school, and we need to get an accurate cost estimate so that, again, the voters, when they're asked to dig deep into their pockets to vote for a renovation project, they know exactly what it's going to cost and exactly what they're getting. These are things that a feasibility study can't do. What we're asking is for sufficient funds, up to $450,000, to retain an architectural firm to take the project to what architects call the schematic design level. And what this represents is a package of information, not just plans, but a full listing of educational specifications for the building, drawings, perspective renderings, cost estimates, behind-the-scenes work, looking at existing conditions, a very, very thorough evaluation of the facility, and a complete presentation of a complete solution to the project. And again, a package that will fully explain to the voters when they make that big decision, hopefully about a year from now, exactly what they're going to be getting for what's going to be admittedly a very big expenditure. So that's what the building committee is asking. We'd like to take it to the next step. This is not just another study. People should understand that. This is the first step in taking the project, the high school project, to completion. It's just the first step of many, and we're asking the voters to support this process.
Great. And what will what specifically will the architect's product be? What will we get?
The product will consist of a complete set of drawings that will explain in great detail what the building is going to look like after the renovation is complete. Mm-hmm. What rooms, what areas will be reconfigured, what areas will be moved. It will include a complete graphic representation of existing conditions at the high school. And the good thing about that is that if for some reason, again, a year from now, the voters don't support a full renovation project, we'll have an excellent database of information about the existing conditions in that high school, which can then be used for more modest renovations. You know, we can go into a certain area and say we have to fix this. Well, the information that we gathered in this schematic design phase will be a great background of information to do that. Again, the architect will do a thorough cost estimate so that, again, the voters have an accurate sense of what they're going to be getting. Presentation drawings, support for a campaign. It's a complete package of information. The other big piece that the architect has to prepare is what's called a phasing program. The building is going to be occupied during the construction phase, and that means that the kids and the faculty are going to be there during the construction. We have to develop a way to juggle the students and the staff around to areas that are not under renovation while other areas are under renovation. That's a very difficult thing to do, and it's going to consume a lot of the architect's time in this schematic design phase. And the result of that will again be a series of drawings and representations of how exactly the project will be phased. That the English department will be here while we're renovating where the English department is now. The math department will be here while we're renovating where the math department is now, and on and on and on. It's going to be a very difficult, very complex phasing project, and that's an important part of what we're asking to be accomplished here. So.
And then I assume the other thing, we'll get much more of an exact cost of what this is going to cost for the taxpayers.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's right. Very accurate cost, which we cannot do in a feasibility phase. In a feasibility phase, you can only generate a range of costs with a fairly high opportunity for error in that cost. Mm-hmm. But when we take it to a higher level of detail, a professional cost estimator can take a very good look at it and come up with a very accurate cost estimate that we can rely on.
Great, good. Frank, I just want to ask you, I mean, you talked earlier about the problems at Reading High. I think it would be good for residents to hear about the things we should be proud of at Reading High and the students and the product that you've been able to provide, and some of the results of our students.
This is a half-hour show. I could speak volumes about our kids. 6 years ago, we've always had terrific young people at Reading. That's my sense. The historians or the faculty always cite special stories about kids and their successes. So I know that we've always done very well that way. Most recently, I know this story around town is we had 2 years ago we had a class that was exceptionally strong academically, and we sent 4 of them. Top 4 kids went to Harvard. Unheard of. Absolutely unheard of in public education. I'm not sure even for private education, for 4 kids right at the top of one class from one town to be able to go to a place like Harvard. We had 6 or 7 other kids go to Ivy League schools. This year, it's early on in the process. We've got a student, we probably have only heard from maybe 15-20% of our kids. We have a student going to Harvard. We have a student, that's number 2. Number 3 is Cornell. Number 6 is Colby. 10 is Brown. We have another student going to Brown. We have a couple kids going to Bowdoin, Trinity, Tufts, really quality institutions, Brandeis, Fairfield, BU, and we haven't even heard yet from the bulk of our kids. And quite frankly, we've heard from a very small percentage of our best students. So the college acceptance trail is going quite well at the high school. Our MCAS scores put us in the top 10% of the state. Talk about drama, talk about band, talk about athletics, and I would say we're the envy of any community around. When I go to principals conferences and we talk about the school, they cite those things. And yet, on Thursday, I'll bring the Middlesex League principals. I'm the president of the league, and they will be coming to Reading High School. When they walk in, or when they walked in the fall for our fall meeting, they were shocked by the condition of the building. They had no idea that it was that bad. Where I used to work, we were a blue ribbon school of national excellence. We didn't do any better there than we're doing by our kids in Reading. There's only one thing that stands in the way of us being in that caliber, and I believe that it's the building. And our kids really deserve. I can't imagine what our kids would do with, because they're so much more creative than I am. If you gave them all the equipment and all the tools and a bright place to work and something that they didn't have to worry about, the heat and light and all those other issues, they'd take projects and they would fly with them. We have not tapped the academic potential of the kids at that high school, and we need to do that. It's the exit. People talk about the flagship of the town. I look at it as it's the exit grade. It's the end of public education, as our kids know it. And what's their last 4 years of experience? They come through elementary schools that have been renovated. They go through 2 beautifully renovated middle schools. And then they walk into this high school. And it's, we just need to do more.
Great. Rich, as you said, the school building committee has been working on this for 6 years. You have come to this point where you want to present this to the voters. Why is this the right question? What are the key reasons on why people should vote for this on April 2nd?
Well, Matt, I think it's easy to say there are 3 main reasons why I think people should vote for this project. The first one is it's time. The town over the past 15 years has renovated virtually every other public building in town. We've done the library, we've done the town hall, we have a new police station, a new fire station. We've renovated, as Matt just said, 2 elementary schools. We have plans on the books and money on the table to renovate another one and to build a new elementary school. We have fully renovated one of the middle schools. We have built a brand new middle school. It's time to do the high school. We've never asked the voters to dig into their pockets for any of these projects. This one we're going to have to ask that. It is the biggest project we'll ever do. Again, it's time. The second reason is that we're going to pay a lot of money to fix this high school, whether we approve this project or not. We can do it in a thoughtful way. We can do it in a systematic way. We can do it in a comprehensive way. And we can get a jewel for the town. And we can get reimbursed by the state for it at a very significant rate if we do it in a thoughtful, systematic, comprehensive way. Or we have a choice. We can spend a lot of money on this building over the next 10 years in a reactive way. When the boiler goes, we can replace the boiler. When the windows fall out of the building, we can replace the windows and probably not get reimbursed by the state. We're going to spend money on this building one way or the other. And the better choice is to do it in a comprehensive way that gets reimbursed by the state. And the third reason is, Frank bragged a little bit about the kids and how well they do. And again, you could go on for hours about how well they do. Look at the drama program. Again, this past weekend, year after year, they participate in the state competitions. They did it again this weekend. Look at the band program. It's the envy of many schools in the entire northeast corridor of this country. Look at the athletic programs, how successful the football team is, the girls' hockey team. They're all extremely successful. These kids are performing at the highest level, and they're doing better than anybody could expect. And frankly, I think they deserve better than that facility we have down there. Those are the 3 reasons I think you should vote yes for this question.
I just would offer one other perspective, Rich. You talked about its time. I guess I'd ask every parent in town to think about having their teenage son or daughter live in the same room for 51 years and never do anything to fix the room up. Never change the electrical systems to, get their VCRs and their telephones and all the things we know kids use today, computers and so on. Never do anything to spruce the place up. Never put a new rug down, never put a new floor in, never repair whatever damage to walls are, never make sure that they've got the proper lighting and never changed the windows, even though 51 years ago they might have been single pane, and we know we've got all these energy efficient things. And I guess I just ask people to consider that when they, because that's what's going on at the high school. I think the building is in remarkable how the condition it's in, given that we really haven't done anything in 50 years. So.
Great. Well, thank you for all this information. We're here today to urge you to vote yes on question 1 on April 2nd. It's an important vote to build pride for the future of our town. As a parent and as a taxpayer of Reading, there are 3 key things for me that I'm going to think about when I go into the voting booth. One is about the education of my 3 children and the education of the thousands of other kids here in Reading. My son, who's a 3rd grader, has had the privilege to go to Joshua Eaton, has just been renovated, and he will go to Parker, which has just been redone. And not only will he have excellent and talented teachers, but he'll have a first-rate learning environment to reach his full capacity. And I want him to be able to continue that as he gets into high school. I don't want to think twice about sending him to the Reading High. Like I know a lot of my friends are now having second thoughts about it. That should not be an option. People should be excited and want to go to Reading High School. Second, as a taxpayer, I'm like you, I don't want to raise my taxes, but there are times when we have to invest in our community and in our buildings. From my perspective, this question makes financial sense. As Rich says, we'll be spending money, but the state will be reimbursing us up to 2/3 of the costs for fixing Reading High School. I don't want to spend piecemeal for a new boiler, for a new roof, and have to spend that all out of my wallet. I want the state to help our town, just like it's helping the other 351 communities here in Massachusetts, to provide strong environmental educational facilities for our kids. And this question right now, to spend up to $450,000 is going to give us what the price tag is going to be. I don't think anyone knows exactly what it is, but by voting yes on question 1 on April 2nd, we'll know what that price tag is and what we're getting when we go back next year to decide how we're going to redo the school. So it's education, it makes financial sense, and third, it's good for the community. The name of our group is Building Pride. It's not just to build a new building, it's to build pride in our community. And if there's one time that we as Reading residents can come together and show that we care about our children, about our students, and about our time, this is a time to do it. So we urge you on April 2nd to go out and vote yes on question 1 so we can build pride in our community and build pride in a high school for the thousands of students that will be attending Reading High over the next 50 years.
Hi, my name is Ray Porter. I'm here to share my views and some facts about choices we need to make as a community on what to do with any renovation plans for the high school. I'm a lifelong resident of Reading, and both my wife Julie and I are graduates of Reading Memorial High School. I'm a parent of 3 children, 2 of which attended Reading schools and graduated from Reading Memorial High School. My youngest son is currently at the Barrows School. I care about children. I know the value of education. I care about quality education. I care about the maintenance of Reading schools. I am a town meeting member, and I am a member of Reading's School Building Committee. I do not belong to any group. I have no private agenda, and I come to you as an individual. an individual that cares about education and cares about the quality of life in Reading. Today, someone in town approached my wife and asked why she was against renovating the high school. Nothing could be further from the truth. So what should we do with our high school? With human nature as it is, I'm sure there are some things that people will just never agree on. And that's okay if it's done respectfully. On the other hand, there are things that most, if not all people will agree on. If you look, I think we would all agree that our high school needs work. So what should we do, and how should we do it? Is one comprehensive and expensive schematic design, which will most likely lead to a plan for a total rehabilitation of the high school, the only alternative, solution, or choice for plans to address what needs to be done to the high school? The State Building Agency, or the SBA, has suggested to Reading that the state would not fund any additions to the building except to address any safety issues, and any state-funded plans and rehabilitation should be within the existing footprint. Given this, why do we need new schematic designs of the high school? Why not use the original 1950s building plans and the 1970s addition plans? With the old high school plans, can we contract to update those plans, develop renovation alternatives to present to the town, and establish a phasing plan at a fraction of the cost of the $450,000 you are being asked for on April 2nd? Why not discuss and fully develop this or other possibilities? If you vote for this upcoming debt exclusion referendum question, you may never know. In last week's Reading Advocate, our state senator, Richard Tissay, released a press release saying that the SBA initial payment funding is in jeopardy. State SBA funds have been cut back significantly, and proposed funding for next year, quote, will only allow 19 of the 300 projects on the waiting list to go forward. RMHS, Reading Memorial High School, is not on that list. Should Reading count on state funds for new proposed school projects? Is it quite possible any state money that may be paid toward the cost of the high school may come 7 to 10 years or more down the road? What will this mean to Reading taxpayers in the interim? Accurate answers to these questions need to be provided to the town before we move forward with any plan. Yes, the high school still needs work, but wouldn't it be prudent to also develop a less costly conservative rehabilitation plan using the existing building plans, since the town has already committed to school renovations and additions to the Barrow School and to building a 5th elementary school? The reality is that we don't know how much all of these school building projects and other town projects coming soon will add to our tax bills. Sure, whatever we do at the high school, we should maximize state funding that may be available. But should state funding dictate everything that we do? For example, what if the town voters wanted an opportunity to fund the renovation of the gym up at the high school, the old original high school, into a state-of-the-art drama music center? Will you be given that choice with the current plan? I don't think that anyone in town wants to further delay a plan to get going in the high school. RMHS 2000 was planned several years ago. RMH renovations should have been completed by now, but for some reason was put on hold. We need to make a hard, practical, financial decision. Feelings should not decide what we do and how we do it. With this school project, let's complete our homework first before we jump in with both feet and pay for it dearly later on. I just wanted to quickly share a school building assistance program advisory dated March 21st, 2002. And this is from the State Department of Education, and I've highlighted a couple of spots I'd like to share with you. And what they say in this release from just last week. In years past, municipalities and districts with approved project applications were almost always assured of funding within a reasonably short 3 or 4 year period. We can no longer offer such assurances. The length of time to receive funding has increased substantially to the point where we cannot even provide likely time frames for individual projects. Cities and towns will have to weigh this uncertainty against the urgency of their needs. On the second page, cities and towns are again reminded that placement on the waiting list for state funds does not constitute a legally binding obligation of the Commonwealth. Although every effort will be made to provide state funding for these projects at some point in the future, such funding is not guaranteed. Last Saturday, there was an article in the Globe that discussed the SBA and the funding changes. Essentially, to capsulize what they have here, there are many towns that are putting projects on hold or scaling back because of the state fund cutbacks. I just have one final note. The current schematic design is counting on 2/3 reimbursement or thereabouts from the state for the plan and the project. All indication now is that the state building assistance money may not be there. We need to develop other alternatives. Please read carefully referendum question 1 on the April 2nd ballot. No dollar limit is mentioned on the referendum question. As a voter and taxpayer, are you comfortable writing a blank check for this plan? Thank you for listening, and please make an informed vote on April 2nd. Hi, my name is Ray Porter. I'm here to share my views and some facts about choices we need to make as a community on what to do with any renovation plans for the high school. I'm a lifelong resident of Reading, and both my wife Julie and I are graduates of Reading Memorial High School. I'm a parent of 3 children, 2 of which attended Reading schools and graduated from Reading Memorial High School. My youngest son is currently at the Barrows School. I care about children. I know the value of education. I care about quality education. I care about the maintenance of Reading schools. I am a town meeting member, and I am a member of Reading's School Building Committee. I do not belong to any group. I have no private agenda, and I come to you as an individual that cares about education and cares about the quality of life in Reading. Today, someone in town approached my wife and asked why she was against renovating the high school. Nothing could be further from the truth. So what should we do with our high school? With human nature as it is, I'm sure there are some things that people will just never agree on. And that's okay if it's done respectfully. On the other hand, there are things that most, if not all people will agree on. If you look, I think we would all agree that our high school needs work. So what should we do, and how should we do it? Is one comprehensive and expensive schematic design, which will most likely lead to a plan for a total rehabilitation of the high school, the only alternative, solution, or choice for plans to address what needs to be done to the high school? The State Building Agency, or the SBA, has suggested to Reading that the state would not fund any additions to the building except to address any safety issues, and any state-funded plans and rehabilitation should be within the existing footprint. Given this, Why do we need new schematic designs of the high school? Why not use the original 1950s building plans and the 1970s addition plans? With the old high school plans, can we contract to update those plans, develop renovation alternatives to present to the town, and establish a phasing plan at a fraction of the cost of the $450,000 you are being asked for on April 2nd? Why not discuss and fully develop this or other possibilities? If you vote for this upcoming debt exclusion referendum question, you may never know. In last week's Reading Advocate, our state senator, Richard Tizay, released a press release saying that the SBA initial payment funding is in jeopardy. State SBA funds have been cut back significantly, and proposed funding for next year, quote, will only allow 19 of the 300 projects on the waiting list to go forward. RMHS, Reading Memorial High School, is not on that list. Should Reading count on state funds for new proposed school projects? Is it quite possible any state money that may be paid toward the cost of the high school may come 7 to 10 years or more down the road? What will this mean to Reading taxpayers in the interim? Accurate answers to these questions need to be provided to the town before we move forward with any plan. Yes, the high school still needs work, but wouldn't it be prudent to also develop a less costly conservative rehabilitation plan using the existing building plans, since the town has already committed to school renovations and additions to the Barrow School and to building a 5th elementary school? The reality is that we don't know how much all of these school building projects and other town projects coming soon will add to our tax bills. Sure, whatever we do at the high school, we should maximize state funding that may be available. But should state funding dictate everything that we do? For example, what if the town voters wanted an opportunity to fund the renovation of the gym up at the high school, the old original high school, into a state-of-the-art drama music center? Will you be given that choice with the current plan? I don't think that anyone in town wants to further delay a plan to get going in the high school. RMHS 2000 was planned several years ago. RMH renovations should have been completed by now, but for some reason was put on hold. We need to make a hard, practical financial decision. Feelings should not decide what we do and how we do it. With this school project, let's complete our homework first before we jump in with both feet and pay for it dearly later on. I just wanted to quickly share a school building assistance program advisory dated March 21st, 2002. And this is from the State Department of Education, and I've highlighted a couple of spots I'd like to share with you. And what they say in this release from just last week. In years past, municipalities and districts with approved project applications were almost always assured of funding within a reasonably short 3 or 4 year period. We can no longer offer such assurances. The length of time to receive funding has increased substantially to the point where we cannot even provide likely time frames for individual projects. Cities and towns will have to weigh this uncertainty against the urgency of their needs. On the second page, cities and towns are again reminded that placement on the waiting list for state funds does not constitute a legally binding obligation of the Commonwealth. Although every effort will be made to provide state funding for these projects at some point in the future, such funding is not guaranteed. Last Saturday, there was an article in the Globe that discussed the SBA and the funding changes. Essentially, to capsulize what they have here, there are many towns that are putting projects on hold or scaling back because of the state fund cutbacks. I just have one final note. The current schematic design is counting on 2/3 reimbursement or thereabouts from the state for the plan and the project. All indication now is that the state building assistance money may not be there. We need to develop other alternatives. Please read carefully referendum question 1 on the April 2nd ballot. No dollar limit is mentioned on the referendum question. As a voter and taxpayer, are you comfortable writing a blank check for this plan? Thank you for listening, and please make an informed vote on April 2nd. Hi, my name is Ray Porter. I'm here to share my views and some facts about choices we need to make as a community.
Destination.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's Candidates Forum. My name is Andy Conley and I'll be moderating this evening. Tonight's event is brought to you by RCTV and co-sponsored by the Daily Times Chronicle and the Reading Advocate. Tonight's discussion will be with candidates running for the school committee. This year, we have 4 candidates running for 2 seats. All 4 candidates are here with us tonight, and I'll introduce them in alphabetical order. First, we have Susan Cavicchi, current member of the school committee. James Keigley, also a current member of the school committee. Carl McFadden, who's running for school committee. And Linda Phillips, also a candidate. Let me explain tonight's format. We have a panel consisting of 2 people who will be asking the candidates questions. We have representatives from both of the town's newspapers. From the Daily Times Chronicle, we have Paul Feely. And from the Reading Advocate, Jane Bennett was due, but I guess she's tied up because of the snow. She may be along a little bit later. We have Nadine Wozniak, I believe. We'll begin tonight's forum with opening statements by each one of the candidates. After the introduction, we'll have our panelists ask the candidates questions. Each candidate will be answering the same question, and I'll alternate the order in which the questions are asked. I hope that we can keep the questions to under 3 minutes. In addition, each candidate will be allowed a total of 4 rebuttals or follow-up statements, and I'll call for rebuttals at the end of each question. And the candidates must decide how to use their 4 follow-up statements. At the end of the questioning, the candidates will have an opportunity for a 2-minute wrap-up. So are we ready? We'll hear the opening statements. First, we'll have Susan Cavicchi.
Thank you to RCTV for sponsoring this event, and thank you to the representatives of the Reading Advocate and the Reading Chronicle for participating. I have been a member of the Reading School Committee since 1991. Some of the highlights of the last 10 years have been hiring a dynamic superintendent to move the school district forward, renovating 3 schools, and building a new school on time and on budget. High academic expectations resulting in 4 successive years of top 20 MCAS results and quality college acceptances. Implementing common curricula across the grade levels K through 5 in math, science, and language arts, and the outstanding achievements of our extracurricular groups with their emphasis on treating others with respect and dignity. When my husband and I moved here in 1974, we chose Reading for its excellent school system, and we have not been disappointed. Our 3 sons graduated from Reading Memorial High School and have all earned advanced degrees thanks in part to their educational training in the Reading Public Schools. During my 27 years as a Reading resident, I have been an active volunteer in the fabric of Reading life. I've been a room mother and tutor at Joshua Eaton, a Recreation Committee member, a speaker for Understanding Disabilities, a charter member of the Reading Band Parents Association, a junior grade books discussion leader at Parker, and a member of the Reading League of Women Voters. My work experience began as a first grade teacher in Winthrop. The following year, I taught first grade at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, where my husband served during the Vietnam War. Since 1982, I have been the executive director of the Massachusetts Burglar and Fire Alarm Association. My duties include preparing the annual budget and monthly financial reports, preparing tax forms, editing and publishing a bi-monthly newsletter, creating and maintaining a website, providing education and support for licensed members of the alarm industry, and working cooperatively with a 30-member board of directors. You might ask, why do I want to continue as a member of the Reading School Committee? I believe that education is the key to success and happiness in life. I believe I have made a difference in the lives of children and would like to enthusiastically continue to provide consistent, competent, caring, and cooperative leadership to make Reading's educational system the best that it can be.
Thank you very much, Susan. Next, we'll have James Keigley.
Good evening. I am Jim Keigley, and I'm running as an incumbent for the Reading School Committee. I'd like to thank the Reading Community Television, the Reading Chronicle, and the Reading Advocate for giving me this opportunity to participate in this forum. For 7 years, for 7 consecutive years, I, along with Ann McGee, provided and produced Reading Candidates Night. I often hoped that if I were a candidate, that this opportunity would be available to me, and thanks to you people, it is. Recently, I have been asked, why am I running again for school committee? I suppose the answer is, I was brought up in a volunteer service world. At the age of 6, World War II broke out, and I volunteered as a junior commando, where I learned the value of $1. As junior commandos, we collected scrap metal, old newspapers, all things that would help and support the war effort. Upon graduating from high school, I volunteered for the United States Infantry and served during the Korean conflict. There are not many of us veterans left, and presently I am the only veteran on the Reading School Committee, and I am proud of it. Over the past 15 years, I have been a volunteer member of the Conservation Committee, Reading Finance Committee, Capital Improvement Committee, and Reading Town Meeting. I served on the Board of Directors for EMI and was a member of the Reading League of Women Voters. These experiences have contributed greatly to my ability to serve our community as a member of the Reading School Committee. During the past few years, I have worked hard to represent you as one of 60 elected officials on the Reading School Committee. During that time, I have used my experience to address the needs of our children. I have worked hard to support the implementation of research-based curriculum and have tried to balance the finances of the town of Reading with the needs of our children. If I am rewarded with a second term as a school committee member, I will continue to work to ensure quality education for all of Reading's children. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Next, we'll have Carl McFadden.
Good evening. I come before you tonight as a candidate for the school committee and as a person who is a product of the Reading school system. For 13 years, the system and its teachers encouraged and motivated me to learn and to grow as a person. Its teachers prepared me for both academic and extracurricular activities to succeed in life. It is where I met my wife, Jill Anthony, class of 1988, and is where I plan to enroll my 2 young children, Jake and Will. As a candidate for the school committee, I feel as now, as we used to say on the playing field, it's payback time. It is time for me to give back to the school system and a community that has given me so much. I would like to use my time and talents to make a strong and fundamental sound school system even better. Like any democratic body, school committee members will take different positions on issues, and tonight will give us an opportunity to see where we candidates stand on important issues such as budget, the new elementary school, renovation of the high school, etc. However, besides discussing and deciding on issues such as these, a school committee member has 2 additional important functions. One is to stay connected with the community that elected him or her so that a member can be educated on the issues, taxpayers, as well as the superintendent. It is not enough for me to say, give me a call. When you have concerns about school matters, I plan to seek out the people who may take a different stand on the issues to make sure I understand all the viewpoints of the community before I make a decision. The other important function of the school committee member is the willingness to engage in civil discussion of the issues. It does not give community great confidence when members of the school committee are sparring about each other's personalities rather than stand on the issues. The school committee should be able to agree and disagree on the issues without being so confrontational that it embarrasses the community. The committee should be able to debate the issues and not each other's motivations. I have started several businesses from scratch and know full well the advantages that can accrue to an organization that believes in teamwork and acknowledges the unique contributions of all personnel. This is the type of school committee I wish to be part of. Thank you, and I look forward to tonight to a productive discussion of the issues.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll have Linda Phillips.
Good evening, and thanks RCTV for having us here this evening, and also the Chronicle and the Advocate for this opportunity to come before you. Thank you for the opportunity to formally and enthusiastically announce my candidacy for a seat on the Reading School Committee and to ask support of Reading voters on April 2nd. My decision to run for school committee is based on several fundamental and important facts. First and perhaps foremost is my sincere belief that new and different perspectives are needed on the committee to ensure that the views and opinions of all residents on all issues are welcomed and respected. All too often in recent years, challenges to conventional thought and wisdom have been met with ridicule. Requests for information, which residents have a right to receive, should not have to be obtained with the Freedom of Information Act and be met with scorn. Questions about certain decisions or conclusions have been met with contempt. To some members of the school committee, requests and questions are considered divisive and harmful. I strongly and respectfully disagree with the committee's current thinking. Debate and dialogue on issues is vital to a democratic process where freedom to express one's views should always be welcomed. Second, but no less important, I am a parent of two wonderful elementary school-age children, and I have a vested interest in the way the school department's budget is developed and appropriated. Policies and procedures implemented by the school committee over the past few years clearly raise questions concerning its practices and priorities. As a member of the school committee, I promised the voters of Reading that all voices would be heard, not silenced, censored, or ridiculed. I guarantee that your concerns will be addressed, not ignored or derided. I pledge that disrespect among and toward other community members will not be tolerated. Finally, as your school committee member, will be approachable and accountable for any decisions and expenditures I support, not evasive and defensive. I will listen to you. As your school committee member, I support cost-effective education with fiscal responsibility. I believe in educational excellence with effective teaching curriculums that will better support the needs of our classroom teachers. I support showing sensitivity to the special needs of Reading's children. Responsible school maintenance and affordable school construction projects will be my goals. When I am elected, I will help to restore civility and fiscal discipline to our school committee. I intend to contribute in a way that will make Reading's school system the best it has ever been. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll switch to the question portion of our event. First question tonight will be from Paul Feely from the Daily Times Chronicle, and the question will be to Mrs. Cavicchi.
Mrs. Cavicchi, what do you believe the role of the school committee to be, and why do you feel you are best suited to be a member of this board?
Well, the primary role of the school committee is to make policy. And our other job is to hire a superintendent. We also are responsible for voting on a budget. I believe that I have experience. The last 10 years I've served on the school committee and have helped to make policy. I think that my background as a teacher in some ways helps me to fully understand the policies that need to be made to help educate children. I also have a business background currently, so working on the budget and hiring the superintendent, I have a certain perspective from both business and education to help me do that.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Keigley, same question.
Yes. Our big event every year is building a budget. To that end, we try to bring forward a budget which will give both a high-rate curriculum and a decent small class size. We also set policy. The only personnel situations we get involved in is the hiring of a superintendent. I've enjoyed it. I've only had 3 years. It's been a great challenge. I had a little advantage. I came in after being liaison from the Finance Committee to the School Committee for a period of 4 years. That is the main reason I wanted the School Committee. It was a known fact that I was going to run for selectman, but I guess I upset the experts when the time came, and I decided after 4 years of being through 4 school budgets, I wanted to be on the School Committee. Thank you.
Same question, Mr. McFadden?
One of the main reasons in reference to being on the school committee is one of the major policies that I honestly believe have been missing is really public relations. Sue and Jim are absolutely correct in terms of the only personnel part they do hire is, in this case, Dr. Haratunian. School committee does not get involved in hiring principals or teachers or anything like that. Really what the most important part of the school committee is to get out in the community, stay connected with the community to let them know what your priorities are as well as what's going on in the school. Unfortunately, in the past year or so, what's been lost is really the wonderful things the children have been doing in the schools, and unfortunately there's been a lot of arguing going on and really not productive to the community. But I think most importantly is that the school committee should be a role model for the students and of how they communicate with each other and respect each other's ideas and opinions.
Great. And last we'll have Mrs. Phillips.
Role of school committee members. The two that stand out in my mind are establishing policy and procedures and what the protocol is to address issues in the schools. I also feel that a very important part is to establish priorities for spending and that the budget needs to be reviewed with scrutiny. I personally recommend a zero-based budgeting review during the budget sessions, but that has yet to find a successful acceptance. I also believe that as a school committee member that you should be a bridge in the community and a good citizen. You should keep a town-wide perspective so that when you make decisions that around the budget or around things that the school department needs, because we all want the very best for our children, that we can be responsible with the finances so that we can reevaluate curriculum to make sure we're getting the best results we can for that. Also being a listening post to see how the policies and practices of the school department, we're competing with the snow removal system, how the policies and the practices of that are in place affect the children and the parents and the rest of the community. I think we should, the school committee should question regularly if their practices and policies are working effectively. And again, I think the main, with the school department spending 70% of the town's budget, I believe not enough scrutiny is given to budget concerns. Priorities are not established, and there always seems to be a concern that something is important in the school budget or deemed important by parents is being left by the side of the road. So I think being a bridge in the community and finding out what's important to parents is an important thing for a school committee member to do.
I don't think there'll be any follow-ups. Any follow-up questions? I don't think so. The next question is from the Reading Advocate. James made it through the snow. You can hear it in the background.
Yeah.
I'm glad you could make it.
Oh, thank you very much.
Next question is for you, and it's to Mr. Keigley.
Sure. Would you please describe how you work with people and perhaps give us an anecdote?
We are constantly in touch with the public. We have had 4 or 5 budget meetings. We have had public meetings on the budget, on just about every event that's come up, including some of our negotiations. I think we've done a great job. I don't think we've left any stones unturned. I go out and talk to the constituents constantly. I get feedback. The public, I go to PTO meetings. I go to all the events that are held in the elementary and middle schools. I have addressed every issue that has been brought to me. I have taken it to the superintendent. I have argued and fought to keep our integrity, to make this school committee be a symbol for the rest of the town. I have not gotten involved in any arguments, feuds, or conflicts. I do respect the other members, and I try to be civil at all times. I don't see any shortfall in our communications with the public.
Okay, thank you. Next, Mr. McFadden.
Probably the best way that I'm able to communicate with the community is I'm a volunteer basketball coach up in the high school as well as a middle school basketball coordinator. It's really fun in terms of you working with the parents. Sometimes you get an advantage by not being necessarily a school committee member where they're leery to say something to you. But when you're talking with them about the schools and the wonderful things that are going on in the schools, you know, it's really great to have a dialogue. And one of the advantages that I do have is the fact that, you know, I grew up in Reading, so, you know, the same teachers that I had when going, you know, through Reading High and Birch Meadow and Coolidge, you know, that are still there, and it's nice for them, you know, being able to talk with them and really communicate from a different end, from being originally as a student now as a parent. And, you know, one of the things that people certainly will attest to me is the fact that I certainly do enjoy communicating with the public, handling different events, chairman of the Reading Veterans Fund, working in the community, president of Friends of Reading Athletics. And, you know, those are the type of community things that I have been involved in and will continue to be involved in, and really has helped me communicate with all different aspects of the community.
Thank you. Next, Linda Phillips.
How do I work with people? Well, there's different kinds of people. There are little people who happen to be my favorite. There are big people. There are people I have things in common with, and there are people I don't have things in common with. I like to share. I like to talk about my opinions. I like to listen to other people. I like to give them an opportunity to share their opinions with me. I like to understand their reasons. I am also a very motivated person. I like to see what needs to be done, if something needs to be done, and I like to find a way to gain consensus with others. And when in the process of doing that, I like to feel that everyone can feel like they're going to get something in the process, that they're going to feel like they're listened to, that they're heard, and the things that are important to them will be addressed or incorporated in any change or decision. I like to work with people because I think that's where we can give something back to the community in doing that, whether it's helping our neighbor or helping a friend who needs a ride or someone who is in other kind of need. I think it's important that we do what we can to help each other. And I think I've been in positions in my full-time employment in a Fortune 500 company where I worked in public relations, and I used to organize large activities for very large corporate functions and for stock shareholder presentations. And I used to have people waiting in line to do activities with me because they felt that I was a fair and honest person, and I shared with them what needed to be done, listened to their input and how to do it, and we all had a great time doing it together. And I am proud to say that I do have some plaques that people have donated to me, recognizing the contribution that I made in my work environment. But there are a lot of ways that you can work with people, and being mature enough to try to find a way that works is what's really important to me.
Great. And last, Mrs. Cavicchi.
I think that I am a quiet and respectful listener. I find that I learn more by listening than by talking. And people who watch the school committee know that I'm not the biggest talker on the school committee. I usually only speak when I have something different to add than what has been added before. Last June, I decided that when I was chairman that we would have 4 community meetings so that we could listen to the people and meet them face to face and get to know people we didn't ordinarily see. And people of all ages came to our 4 meetings and felt free to share their concerns and their disagreements with us. Several people at the end told me that when they came to the meetings, they were angry and upset, but having sat through the meetings and had their questions heard and answered, they felt differently when they left. So I think that's an example of quiet and cooperative and respectful listening.
Great. Okay, the next question is from the Reading Daily Time Chronicle, Mr. Feely. And the question is to Mr. McFadden.
Mr. McFadden, what do you think is the single most important issue facing the school committee today? And if elected, what steps would you take in addressing it?
The most important issue really is our high school. You know, the major thing about the high school, Reading High School should be really the flagship of the Reading school system and not the albatross. You know, being a Reading High graduate in '87, what disappoints me is the fact that the condition of the school has just continuously deteriorated. The same tiles that were out in '87 when I graduated are still out today. You know, the teachers in the high school, their morale level, you know, is certainly down. I mean, if you're in that type of atmosphere, it's not really uplifting. And, you know, God willing, you know, question number 1 will pass. I'm a huge supporter of getting the 450 passed. And the major issue I'm going to do is, when that is passed, is really push the SBC. They've been working diligently on it, is really to move forward as quick as possible to get it done, because it's not fair to over 1,100 children that have to be educated in that atmosphere.
Next is Mrs. Phillips.
The most important issue, there are actually 2 that really vie for first place in my mind. The one I think would come out to be number 1 right now is the proportion of the school budget, 70% in relation to the rest of the town. I believe that wasn't too long ago it was 60% and it was 65% and it's now at 70%, and I see that the push to increase the school department budget is 71% going to be on the horizon soon. Is 75% going to be on the horizon soon. To the extent that the school department budget grows is also to the extent that the town side of the financial picture of the town side also shrinks and causes other problems within the community. So I think that the proportion of the school budget to the town side and the divisiveness that have set up in the last 2 years between people who recognize that the town has needs that need to be addressed, as well as parents recognizing that they want what's best for their children. I think that both sides can find some common ground here, but I think that the continuous growth of the school department budget is the thing that concerns me the most. I'll just slip in, since I've not gotten the beeper that my time is up. I do think that the high school renovation is a major major project that needs to be worked on. I am not sure that the school committee is the right place to address that. So I believe, and I have made recommendations before at town meeting, and I have proposed a warrant article that will address some changes that I think need to be made on school building projects. So I'm sure the school committee supports anything that will be done to the high school, but the growth of the budget is the area that concerns me the most, and I think it needs the most attention at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, Ms. Cavicchi.
I think the overriding issue is financing the system, because that affects building projects, curriculum, class size, all of the other problems that we have. Our enrollment has grown steadily over the years, and that's one of the reasons that we've had an increase in our budget. 80% of our budget is for staff. We try to keep class sizes small, so that, of course, is going to increase the budget. And the superintendent has tried to create entrepreneurial programs that will bring in money, such as his special ed entrepreneurial program that brings children in from other towns. The money that is raised from that helps to offset the special ed unanticipated needs budget. So for me, finding ways to bring in more money to the system, both to benefit the schools and to benefit the town, is really a very important issue. And hopefully once we get our landfill developed, that will give us a little cushion, and we can move on from there.
Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Keigley.
Well, let me say this. A society standard is only as good as the educational system and the education of its people. Education is expensive. Technology is changing rapidly. Reading spends approximately $25 million a year, and 80% of it is for salaries. We are working hard to keep class sizes and the curriculum maintained at the level it is today. Now, I don't want to see that sacrificed. First of all, we worked hard to get where we are. And to go backwards would be tragic because it takes much longer to come forward again. The high school, that's another ball game. Yes, it's got to be fixed up. Yes, we have to have some proposals so you can see what we are going to do, and we're in the process of doing that. That's what this override is for. But let me say this. Most important at the moment is to provide the best education possible for the youth of Reading. And I don't know if you can put a price tag on that. I don't think it's too high what we're doing now. And if it takes 70% of the revenue to the town, so be it. I think we're getting an awful lot for our dollar.
Okay, thank you. Next question will be from the Reading Advocate, Jane.
Sure.
And the question will be to Mrs. Phillips.
Sure. Linda, would you please prioritize what you think Reading schools need the most?
You mean the system or the schools themselves?
The school system. What are the most pressing needs?
I think a couple things come to mind. One of the most pressing needs is to do work on the high school. That is certainly a consensus that has been reached for a long time, and there is a need to address that issue, and that issue should move forward. The other issue is the curriculum. I believe that more time needs to be done to evaluate the curriculum in light of things that could be enhanced, find ways to help students who are not doing well on MCAS, to help the students who take the Stanford 9s and don't do well on those. There needs to be more evaluations of the curriculums that we have and what results we're getting from them. An area of concern of mine is the new language arts curriculum, which has been implemented now for 3 years at a cost of over $650,000. It also requires, according to the superintendent, about $200,000 worth of professional development annually to support that program. My question at one of the school committee budget meetings was, could you tell us what is so great, or what kind of effects, or what's your expectation of this program versus another community who was able to spend over $400,000 less. And we implemented our program before the Department of Education curriculum frameworks for language arts was even complete last June of 2001. And the response I received was very telling and very disturbing. I was encouraged by the chair of the school committee that if I thought that was a good curriculum, I could go live in that town. And that really concerned me because it really didn't address my concern about, first of all, the money that was spent on that curriculum and will be spent to implement it properly. And secondly, that our MCAS scores over 4 years have not changed in the language arts area. So I'm not really sure we're going to benefit from spending that much more money on that program.
Thank you. Next, Mrs. Cavicchi.
Just to address something that Linda said about the other community, which was Stoneham. And Stoneham already had a curriculum in place, so they spent less because they were just building on what they already had. We were starting from scratch. And as a former first grade teacher, I can tell you that it's a really wonderful program which covers all aspects of language arts. It is just a great program. The parents are excited about it. The parents who have talked to me think it's a really wonderful program. What I think of the priorities are, again, just as in the other question, is money, because money is what we need to make everything go. We need money to pay for enrollment issues, such as the new school that has been stalled for several years, the high school, to pay for really excellent teachers, to, all of the things that a school system needs. It takes money to do it, and we spend less per pupil than any other town around. We have a very creative school committee and superintendent who manage to make things work every single year, and to have our students scoring very high on the MCAS test and on the Stanford 9s. And we make do with very little money, but if we had more money, we could be even more awesome.
Great. Next, Mr. Keigley, same question.
Most important thing we need here in Reading to help maintain and build our school system is the support of the citizenry. We need recognition from the public that we have been working hard and that we will continue to work hard, but we also need help financially. We have some request on the ballot for this election. It's a request for $500,000 to provide plans for the high school. We also need help from the state. We need more Chapter 70 money. We've been cut back something severe this year. Now, when the state mandates programs and we have to implement them, and then they pull back their support and leave us holding the bag, that is not fair. And we've been faced with this. We also were faced with the fact that year after year, our Chapter 70 money would increase, and then to have the rug pulled out from under us while we have made commitments to the town and the people, again, is not fair. So what we need is support. We need support from the state, our own citizens, and everyone in this room tonight.
Thank you. Next, Mr. McFadden.
I think probably the most important thing we need to do, and what the schools need the most, is leadership. When people watch what's going on in the schools, they got to have a sense of confidence and pride of what the school committee represents to the community. I think, unfortunately, what's been going on lately is we're not really accentuating what the wonderful things the kids are doing in the schools. We certainly do need money. As Sue very well pointed out, the fact that we are one of the lowest spending school systems around. And, we really do need to look at entrepreneurial programs. One of the things that I've been promoting, especially with the selectmen lately, is for us to take a real hard look at whether or not the town of Reading needs to be in the light business. we need to maximize all of our assets. The Reading Light Department is worth many, 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 many millions of dollars, and we need to take a look at whether or not we should be selling that and taking that money and put it towards the school as well as to put it to the towns. So really, the two most important things, I think, is the fact that, we need to provide leadership to the community to give them a sense of confidence, as well as to find additional ways to bring in money before we necessarily go back to the taxpayers, because the last thing I want to do is have Reading be a town where you got to make $250,000 a year in order to live there. That isn't what Reading's all about.
Thank you. Next question is from the advocate again. We're going to switch around, gets the first question. So I think first your question will go to Mrs. Cavicchi.
Susan, what is your position on MCAS testing?
Very torn. I realized that the state felt that they needed standardized testing and a standardized curriculum, but I think it was geared more toward the cities, the larger cities, not really towns like Reading, which were doing very well with curriculum and had creative and wonderful programs and got children into good colleges. So I don't think the MCAS was aimed at towns like Reading. But it's here. It's the law. We have to do it. So we've worked very hard to create curriculum that is geared toward success in the MCAS. Our math program and our language arts program were brought in for that very reason.
Next, Mr. Keigley.
I'm very torn on it myself. First of all, I think what we're doing is we're building the school year on one exam. I can't tell you the pressure that is put on some of these students with the MCAS exam. I know when I was a student in school, exam, just the word scared the heck out of me. I was not very good in written exams. Yet when the exam was over, if you were to give me a verbal, I could come out with an A. I know students who really go into a trauma when they're faced with these exams. Certainly we need some sort of testing to find out, are we successful with our 10 months of school? Are we doing the job? Are we making progress? Are the students coming out educated? Yeah, we have to have some sort. But we, in my opinion, we are using the entire school year to get ready for one exam. What are we sacrificing? I'd like to know. That's it.
Okay. Next, Mr. McFadden.
MCAS really shouldn't be the most important part of a child's academic career in terms of it shouldn't say, if you don't pass this test, you don't graduate. But it is a good measurement on how school systems do. When I speak to a lot of teachers, they're more concerned about the fact that, they're kind of handcuffed to teach for a test as opposed to teaching everything about what's going on in the education system. So, unfortunately, it is the law. It's what we have to deal with. Reading's in the top 20 in the MCAS scores. The teacher's doing a heck of a job. But unfortunately, when you look at MCAS, people just talk about math and English part of it. But really, when you look at Reading, unfortunately, on like social studies, because there's not such an onus on the MCAS part of it, we're not doing as well as we are in reference to the math and English. So the most important thing about MCAS is the fact that it is the law, but, I would be strongly encourage us for it not to be a priority for a child to graduate, because it really is unfair to really dictate, one test is going to tell whether or not they're going to graduate.
Thank you. And last, Mrs. Phillips.
I do support the MCAS testing. I not only support MCAS, but I support our school department's effort to continue with the Stanford 9 testing. The MCAS testing over 4 years in this nice handout that was given at a school committee meeting show that in 1998, Reading ranked 22. In 99, Reading ranked 23. These are overall average scores. In the year 2000, Reading ranked number 20. And in 2001, we ranked 22. I went back over some of the information in my budget books from town meeting, and I was very interested to find that when we were first ranked in 98, our school department budget was $21,354,000. And then I looked into the '01 town meeting budget and found out that we were $26,384,000, or $5 million increase. So that got me really looking. And I looked into the enrollment data and found out that $5 million more was for 75 more students. And basically, over the 4 years, the MCAS scores haven't changed. So I think we can even improve on a good rating to make it even better. The one thing that I have major concerns about is the Stanford 9s that are given to 6th graders every year in October, and they took it last in 2001. There's an area called computational skills. Our district-wide average on Stanford 9s is 45% at the level 1 or 2 area, which is called little or partial mastery. This is under computational skills. However, the thing that concerned me the most was that when you looked at separate breakouts between the Parker School had 51% are in level 1 and 2 with little or partial mastery on computational skills for math. When you look at Coolidge, the scores were significantly lower, which is a higher percentage of children who know the material. 38% at Coolidge in 6th grade are in the level 1 and 2 with little or partial mastery.
30 more seconds.
The result of that is that we have 6th graders who are not prepared for the 6th grade because they're starting at a disadvantage. And I have concerns that we need to address those numbers, not just to say how wonderful we're doing, but to say those are not statistics, those are our children, and if they need our help, we should be doing what we can to have every child successful in school.
Thank you. Are there any follow-up questions or statements? Okay, the next question will be from Paul Feely from the Daily Times Chronicle, and it will be to Mr. Keigley.
Mr. Keigley, school budget cuts are reducing the number of teachers, resulting in larger class sizes. I believe that some elementary classes are projected to have as many as 26 students. Some parents are concerned that this is not educationally sound. What class size are you willing to fight for?
Well, ideally, if you go and read from the experts, 18 is the ideal class size. What am I willing to fight for? I believe we should be in the vicinity of 23. We are having a space problem. Now, you'll hear people say we're not. We, right today, with the new school open, would be even to where we are and have our class sizes down to 23. Keep in mind the fact we got to remove these 6 portables. We have 4 classrooms we're using over in Coolidge. We have to have 4 more classrooms for music art. So what I'm really saying is, without that new school, we have a problem. Now, if you don't think we have a problem, then we can go with 28, 29, 30 students in a class. But that's not my opinion of a decent class size. Will we ever get to 18? I don't think in my lifetime. I don't know how much longer I have, but anyway, I guess what I'm saying is 23 is my magic number.
Thanks. Next, Mr. McFadden.
Paul, let me make sure I understand the question correctly. Is it in an optimum world? Is that what you're asking? Or realistic?
I'd say realistic.
Realistically, I would say, in the elementary schools is probably the most important time to have the smallest classroom possible because the children need to get a good base. And I would say, obviously, in the low 20s, 20, 21 for the elementary school. And then when you get into the middle school, the children are a little bit more adapted in terms of they've been trained a certain way of, how to learn certain things, and where you can get away with probably in the 23 to 24 area. And then in high school, more like 25. But I really think the most important thing is on the elementary level to be able to have the smallest class size possible, because really that's the make or break time for children.
Great, thanks. And next, Mrs. Phillips.
My opinion about the debate on class size and reduction of elementary school teachers, is that what we're talking about? There are a lot of variables here because it really depends. There are several things it depends on. One is the age of the child. Two, what kind of curriculum is being taught. And three, are there any children in the class with special needs? The state does have guidelines, but their guidelines are not specific enough to dictate to the schools what would be optimum and what would be the minimum requirements. With the exception of kindergarten, the state requirement is that the kindergarten class size should average around 25. In Reading, we have kindergarten class sizes that I believe are no larger than 21 students in a class. So they're getting a lot of time with the teacher on kindergarten curriculum. We have 70% of our classrooms throughout the district are at 22 students or less. I think that's a good number. We have 90% that are 26 and within the 26 and less as well. So we have pretty good class sizes. I know that some parents are concerned about third graders who have 26 in a class. Again, it depends on the curriculum, how difficult it is, and what grade it is, and it depends on if there are special needs children in the class that have special assistants there to help them, and it depends on how quickly the children learn the material that they're being taught in the school. So class size, what I'd be willing to fight for, I'd like to see class size not become such a demanding issue that we need to demand to pay attention to it so much so that we have to go out and get signatures and make sure we get 4 teachers. I think it is unfortunate that elementary school teachers are on the list to be cut. I think they should be on the last on the list to be cut, but I didn't make any decision in prioritizing that. So I think we're in good shape in class size. The school department has been reporting that we have the lowest class size in 10 years. So I don't think it's an issue that really raises to the level of high anxiety or that we need to fight over anything. I think we can look at how classes are allocated, and parents need to be aware that they can move their children to different schools if there are class sizes that are smaller in other schools, that they can take advantage of that if they feel that strongly that might meet the need for their child. So I don't think we're there yet into arm wrestling class sizes. I think we're doing a pretty good job of keeping it where most people find it satisfactory.
Thank you. Last, Mrs. Cavicchi.
I think we are there. Next year, the projected enrollment for 2002, 2003, and this chart was prepared before we cut the teachers. There are 2 kindergarten classes that have, one has 25, 2 have 24, 5 have 24, and 1 has 23. One more child arrives in the class of 25, we have to add a class. And, suggesting that parents take their children to another school in the district is very hard to do, because with a kindergartner goes into the school, and that's the school where they're going to be for the next 5 years, and that's where they want to be. They don't want to be shipped around, and that happens in Reading a lot. We shift children around, and it's not the optimum way to go. If I had my druthers, I'd have 18 in a class. I'd have 15 in a class. That's what the research shows is good. I taught first grade. My first year, I had 35 children in my class, and I can tell you that is pretty horrible. The primary grades really need to be low, because you're teaching the basics, you're teaching reading and math, and you're teaching learning skills and study skills that they're going to take with them for the rest of their lives. So I think it's a very, very important issue, and it's up to the principals to decide which classes in their particular schools. They have a certain allocated number of teachers, and it's up to them to decide. And they look at the makeup of the class, they look at how much inclusion there is in the class, and then they make the decision. No parent is ever happy to have class sizes that they feel are too large for their children, and it makes a difference if you have small classes.
Great. Do we have any follow-up statements or questions? Okay, we'll move to the next question. Next question is from the Reading Advocate. Jane, your question is to Mr. McFadden.
Sure. We had some talk in town last year about having a juvenile police officer dedicated to the school system. What's your opinion on that?
I'm in favor of it. I think, one of the nice things, coaching in the high school and working with the middle school kids is the fact that when I'm speaking with, the chief of police or the community service officer, Pat Iapika, all you hear are really good things, and that the children, respect the authority, obviously. Having a community service officer, I'm not in favor of that person obviously having a gun in the school, and that was never really brought up. But I think it's important for the children to, see the fact that these people are out there to protect us, and really for the children to understand, the fact that, by having a police officer in there, they can be an advocate for them, because, a lot of children have issues that go on in home or with fellow students that they may not necessarily feel comfortable talking about to their parents, and maybe having a community service officer in the schools, they're able to feel more comfortable around them.
Great. Next, Mrs. Phillips.
I have a few concerns about it. I'm not sure if it's a good idea. I have concerns certainly that the person who is there should not be carrying a weapon. Would this person be able to be easily identified, wearing a uniform, for example? Or is this person there to get to know the students, to make themselves available the way guidance counselors are? I would question what their role would be, what the expectation would be. There might be a concern among students that he might be there to report to parents, kinds of things. So I don't really know what the purpose would be. I think there are resources in the high school, I don't know for sure, that would be there to address some of those needs. How this would all work out, whether it would work out, there is a concern about the cost of this, which is why this got put on the back burner. Are all really would need to be evaluated, in my opinion, before I would consent to have this kind of presence in the high school.
Okay, next we have Ms. Cavicchi, Mrs. Cavicchi.
I'm really lukewarm to the idea. I certainly would not want an armed officer in the school, and I don't want a school to become a camp. I don't want it to be. I'm very conflicted about it. I remember the discussion that we had about it. I was lukewarm then, and I haven't changed my mind. I'd need to be convinced that it had real benefits for the students, and I'm not convinced about that right now.
Great. Next, Mr. Keigley.
Well, we're living in a different world, there's no doubt about that. A lot of children come from broken homes, one-parent home. A lot of children come home to no one. To come home to no one if you have a problem when you're a teenager can be very, very disturbing. Do we need a police officer in the schools? I don't think so. Not in uniform and not certainly with a weapon. But do we need someone more qualified to handle the problems of teenagers? Yes. If there's no one at home, or they can't get it at home, then I believe it's our responsibility as educators to provide it. Yeah, it's going to be expensive. But this is what society is all about. We're here to help everyone else, not ourselves. The name of the game isn't me, I, or whatever. We're here to get these students through the most difficult years of their life. And if it takes an extra psychologist, a guidance counselor, yes. But to have a police officer, I don't think it works. And I don't think it belongs in the schools. So I'm not lukewarm, I'm cold.
Okay, any follow-up questions? Okay. Next question is from the Chronicle. Mr. Feely, your question is to Mrs. Phillips.
Mrs. Phillips, what are your views on the importance of accreditation of the high school?
Accreditation of the high school. I think in the near future, we're going to be talking more about this. I was at a school committee meeting a couple of months ago where the superintendent and the high school principal introduced the staff who will be working on this effort over the next couple of years. Our high school has achieved accreditation standards. We are up for review within 2 years, and I'm sure that they will do everything they can to make sure we maintain that accreditation. I get real uncomfortable, though, when I hear people use the renovation of the high school as an excuse that we might lose our accreditation. I'm not convinced that that's true. I am aware that the accreditation board is a private organization of people who go to different schools and review different programmatic issues, different building issues, and things that would concern the education of students in the high school. And I'm sure all of those will be addressed, and we've been assured by the school department that there will be no problem in the Reading Memorial High School getting accreditation without any problem. So it's a necessary step we have to participate in. I'm sure we'll pass with flying colors, and I don't really think whether or not or how the high school gets renovated will affect whether we enjoy the full accreditation that we have in the past.
Okay, thank you. Next, Mrs. Cavicchi.
Okay. I was on the school committee 10 years ago, and the accreditation was done, and we did not pass with flying colors then. There were some issues that were related to the condition of the building, that some science labs were not up to snuff, and other issues. It wasn't a failure by any means. We passed, but flying colors would not describe it. I think accreditation of the high school is extremely important. It's sort of like testing of children. It's a test of your school system, and the accreditation is a way to maintain standards by which all schools are judged, so that you need to have independent bodies come in and look at your school and tell you where you need to improve. And I think it's a very important issue.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Keigley.
Yes, first let me say that the high school has to be addressed. I am strongly in favor of doing a renovation to the high school. To what degree, I haven't got there yet. But let me say this. The day when we had a classroom with 6 rows and 7 seats deep is gone. This school, geographically, is not laid out in a manner to address the classes that we have today. We have technology which has advanced to such a degree that all our labs are outdated. We're struggling to maintain any sort of order in the computer world. It's not just soap, water, and paint. The school needs a lot more than that. I can see accreditation being held back if we don't face and do something about the deterioration of the school itself, because the school is old. The infrastructure is falling apart. We have leaking pipes. We have sewerage pipes which are obsolete. We have old lead piping in the school. That's gone years ago. I can go right through the whole engineering of the school. It's got to be addressed. And it doesn't mean that we have to tear it down and build new. But what it does mean is that we have some extensive work to do, and we've got to face the reality that this school is a little behind in technology.
Next, we have Mr. McFadden.
In reference to accreditation, it's the most important thing that we can have, obviously, in the community. Can you imagine what would happen? And people always talk about what's their value of their home. If you lose accreditation of a high school, forget it. I mean, people are going to be leaving out of Reading in droves. Right now, one of the biggest obstacles that I think the school committee has is the fact that if you asked 8th graders that are going to high school how many people are looking they're interested in going to private schools because of the physical condition of the high school is up dramatically. It's a huge obstacle that the school committee needs to address. And the only way they're really going to be able to address it, people aren't so much worried about the academic side of it, is the fact that they don't want to really put their children in an atmosphere where by the time they hit fifth period, around lunchtime, they're dirty from what's going on in the physical condition of the school. If you add to that the fact that we're not accredited, you're not going to have to worry about class sizes because there's not going to be very many people wanting to go to Reading High.
Good. Do we have any follow-up questions? Mrs. Phillips?
Yes, I'd just like to concur with Mrs. Cavicchi that I have a copy of the letter here from the New England Association of Schools and Colleges Commission on Public Secondary Schools in 1996 to the principal of the high school, and the concern was that the issues related to the number of science laboratories for instructional purposes remain unresolved. Also included with that letter was an attachment by the superintendent at the time of a list of things that, according to the town treasurer, we're going to be done to make sure we maintain compliance. And at the top of that town meeting list that appropriated $1,850 was at the top of the list $200,000 for science labs and HVAC upgrades of $600,000, plumbing $200,000, intercom $50,000, roof replacement $100,000, replacing windows $90,000, exterior doors $24,000, elevator repair $6,000. I didn't know there was an elevator at the high school. I'll have to visit it. And miscellaneous items of $30,000. So this was spent between the 97 and 98 fiscal year. So I'm sure we are well within our accreditation credits, and I look forward to continuing success with that in the future.
Any other follow-on questions?
Yes. Linda refers to information that goes back to 1996. It is 6 years later. We have 1,200 or more students in and out of that school every day, never mind parents, town meeting, athletic programs. Any building that can withstand 6 years of this traffic and this use and still maintain what we did in 1996 is a building that's got its doors locked and no one's been in it. Now, $100,000 for plumbing. This building is a big building. I mean, the Reading High School in my books is gone out way too much territory. I would like to see it consolidated a little bit, but we have to work with what we have. And $1.5 million cosmetically could make a difference to where you'd notice it. But as far as bringing the school to within standards for accreditation, no, $1.5 million is soap and water.
Any more follow-up questions? Okay, the next question is from the Reading Chronicle again, Mr. Feely, and your question is to Mrs. Cavicchi.
Mrs. Cavicchi, I believe there was an article recently in a newsletter from the Killam School regarding unexcused absences. Should the school district accommodate parents who withdraw their children from school for family vacations?
I am so strongly opposed to parents taking their children out for vacations. My children said that I was sort of Nazi-like when it came to school attendance. I don't think there's any excuse whatsoever, and the only reason that teachers should be asked to accommodate absences is for illness. If, certainly teachers will bend over backwards if a child is ill to get the work to them. I think it is the job of a child to be in school every day. That's his job. And it's the job of the parent to make sure that the child is there. So I am unequivocally opposed to taking children out for school vacations.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Keigley.
I stand very firm with that statement Mrs. Cavicchi made. I kind of admire those parents who wait for April vacation or February vacation or even Christmas vacation, and they go down to Disneyland with their kids and take a breather from it all. But to pull a student out of school during session, I was disappointed when we had the Super Bowl demonstration party over at City Hall Plaza. How many students were at the depot waiting for the train. So I guess I'm a Scrooge when it comes to that, but we've got to draw a line someplace, and the students' place is in school, during school session. And I don't think there's any excuse. I certainly was never pulled out of school. I mean, I was sent to school when I had to fake it. I mean, when I used to say I was sick or something, and I went to school sick. So I stand at there's no position in my life for that.
Okay, Mr. McFadden?
You know, a lot of people would say that the kids aren't in school enough. You know, my biggest belief is that the children should be in school. There's plenty of vacation, obviously, with February and April vacation. You know, it's funny, my wife and I joke about the fact that she was out sick for about 3 or 4 days, and she missed when run-on sentences was being taught in English class. And today she still feels as though if she didn't miss those 3 or 4 days, maybe she wouldn't have the run-on sentence problem she has there. So I'm absolutely opposed that people should not be leaving for school.
Great. And Mrs. Phillips?
I'm not quite so rigid because I have personal experience to share. I think, of course, a student should be at school every day they possibly can while they're healthy with the support of their parents. I also think that it is the parents' right and responsibility, if a family need requires it, that the children be removed from school for anything that the parent deems important. Obviously, the parent is included in the child's education and has a vested interest in the success of that child. But it also is necessary at times to have the children meet with a doctor, for example, or, which is still an unauthorized absence, or if it turns out that the children have to be removed from school, then I think it is not up to the teachers to supplement, and that would not be my expectation, nor has it been my expectation when we've had to do this, that my husband and I, during that time, actually tutored our children, and when they came back to school, we received feedback from the teachers that our children were ahead of their classmates, because I think children work a little harder when they're working with mom and dad, and they know that mom and dad want them to succeed. I have concerns. Unauthorized absence doesn't bother me because I think parents have a right to decide what is important for their family or how it meets the needs of their family. I have a concern about the loss of student learning time during the day, how children regularly attend assemblies that have nothing to do with what they're learning in school, but it's a special occasion. Field trips are fun, but do we really need 3 or 4 for third graders to be attending, to be traveling on buses without seat belts, and missing valuable learning time in school, only to find out that some of that learning time is expected to be made up by the parents at home because they didn't quite get to finish their work that day at school. So I have concerns about the learning time in and of itself, and that there are depletions to that at a more rapid pace, and it occurs more frequently throughout the school year. And I have concerns about that when it's not curriculum related and is for an enrichment activity, which is well and good, but at the same time deprives the child of some much needed learning during the optimum school learning time during the day when they're prepared to be there and to learn.
Okay. Do you have any follow-up questions? I don't think so. Next question is from the Reading Advocate. Ms. Bennett, your question is to Mr. Keigley.
Mr. Keigley, this is about school building assistance. There is now a 10-year waiting list for school building assistance to kick in. There are 300 projects on the school building assistance list. Only 19 of those are going to move forward this year because of the cuts in school building assistance. We have heard from other candidates this week the news that the town has little or no cash reserves. We have no capital spending, and the selectmen are really at a loss right now on where new revenue streams might come from. Therefore, do you think it's unreasonable to ask the town to project out its financial picture over the next 10 years so voters can make a more informed decision about the high school?
Let me answer that by saying, back in 1992, we established what was known as the Capital Improvement Program, and I was elected chairman and held that seat for 5 years. We then had a 10-year plan, and we followed that plan. There was times we had to push something out because we were short on money. But what has happened in this town is something that disturbed me the entire time I was on the finance committee, and is that we built the police station, we built the fire station and town hall all out of the operating budget. In my opinion, they should have been override items. So we have depleted our cash reserves, free cash, and the reserve fund to a point where we really have nothing to lean back on. Now, excuse me, Jane, to get back to your question.
That's all right. No, I think you're doing a great job.
I think what we're going to have to do, we have a very bad situation. If this industrial park at the landfill doesn't come through soon, we are faced with a $4 to $6 million capping of that land. At the same time, if SBAB doesn't come back in time, we're carrying an awful lot of debt. When I got on the finance committee, we had a $5 million debt. I remember asking the town manager back in 1993, how much debt can the town of Reading afford to carry? And the figure given to me at the time was $75 million. Well, I got news for you, up to 63. Now, we're paying a substantial amount of interest on that $63 million. So we are depleted. It's a wolf eating itself. We are going to have to first cut our spending, which we are doing. I've seen the municipal budget and I've seen the school budget. We are going to have to, and if your question refers to the SBAB money coming in late, not coming in the 3 to 5 year period, but coming in with 10 years, we would have to go for an operational override. Now, if you notice, we're talking about an override for the high school. There's no way in the world we're going to be able to do the high school without override. So we're in trouble if the state doesn't come through with the SBAB money. We will have to go for an operational budget override just to keep us in business.
We need to wrap up. Next, Mr. McFadden.
Well, you know, one of the things that's come out recently is that, you know, we're really looking at a community that most likely when you factor in the high school will have about $115 to $120 million worth of debt over the next 10 years. I mean, that's an astronomical number. I think what's important for us is, as I mentioned earlier, is for us to take a look at all of our assets. And the biggest asset the town of Reading has is RMLD. There's been a figure bandied about saying that it could be worth $25 to $30 million. I have absolutely no problem selling or be in favor of selling RMLD, taking $25 to $30 million in to help subsidize payment of the high school. You know, the town of Reading's paying about $3.8 to $4 million in debt service, just interest on that, on the capital plan. You know, if you're able to take that money, eliminate the debt service, we're now all of a sudden we're freeing up an additional couple $1 million on cash flow before you're going back to the taxpayers, because I think you have a responsibility to the taxpayers of the town to really maximize and look at every asset you have. People are very excited about getting, you know, hopefully not having to pay $4 million to cap the landfill. How excited would they be if you were able to sit there and say, hey, look, we got $25 million coming in for the sale of the light department?
Thank you. Ms. Phillips.
I think the question was, would we be in favor of prioritizing a list or putting a 10-year list out there so that we could see?
Oh, yeah. In view of the possibility that school building assistance might not kick in for 10 years, assuming that then the taxpayers would have to bear the debt. Do you think that the town should be projecting out 10 years to try and give the voters an idea of what they're in for before or in conjunction with voting for this, for the high school?
Yes, I would very much favor an overall outlay of expenditures by the town. In fact, I just received this week, and I happened to put it in my information folder. I think it's very revealing. It's a copy of the 10-year capital improvement plan for year 02 through year 2011. Ooh, this printing is really small. Financing plan for borrowing. And for fiscal year 03, the borrowing for the Coolidge Middle School, which we expect to get reimbursed from for the first time from SBA, will cost the town $542,025. Parker Middle School is also on the list, and we'll probably be paying that for 15 years or more. That's $677,000 annually. Joshua Eaton School is also on the list because of repairs and renovations that have been done there for $340,000. I'm sorry, $340,000 for Parker Middle School. Joshua Eaton is listed at, I want to make sure, it looks like $1.5 million. And this does not even enter the cost of the Sunset Rock School or the Barrows renovation, which doesn't actually kick in till fiscal year 2006. The new elementary school is listed first at $543,000, and then the Barrows renovation is listed in fiscal year 2007 for $425,000. I think sometimes people might forget when we vote for school projects that, well, the money will just take care of itself. I think it's important to note that we're going to be paying for the police station for probably 12 or 13 more years, that these school projects have 20-year lifespans, and that to the extent that we keep going into new building projects and we don't remember that a portion of the town's budget is already relegated to pay the past debt, I think that's why we find ourselves in financial tight straits. I think it would be helpful for the people in the town to know exactly what we're paying now, how much it costs us, and certainly if the interest that the town's expected to pay on these building projects, if the timeline extends and is more costly, we should be aware of that as well.
Thank you. And last, Mrs. Cavicchi.
The debt service is daunting. There's no question about it. And I think it's always good to have everything laid out for the taxpayers to know before they make a decision. The high school will be the first school project that will be a debt exclusion. In the past, as Jim alluded to, we've always paid for it out of the operating budget, which I think had good and bad points to it. But the high school will be debt exclusion, so if it does pass, then the taxes hopefully will pay for it. And we've always been threatened with a 10-year window of reimbursement, and what has been proven to be true is that usually the reimbursement comes in earlier than we expected. I don't know if that will continue in the future. With regard to the RMLD, I have some concerns about selling it because we don't know how much it will get, and whatever amount we do get, we will have to share with all the other towns, so we won't get the total amount of whatever is found. And then we would not be receiving the $1.8 million that we get every year currently. Where would that money come from that we've come to count on in our budget every year? So I have some concerns with it. It's not the school committee's purview to thank God, to decide on that, but I think there are some concerns and it needs some further study.
Great. Follow-up question?
Just one quick follow-up in terms of the town of Reading owns RMLD. Linfield and North Reading and Wilmington do not. There's a shared revenue agreement that the town has entered into, but Reading is responsible for the debt on it, and Reading would be entitled to it. Sue's absolutely right. Town receives $1.8 million of assistance for that. But being someone that has gone through a deregulation in the telecom industry, it's all part of what you negotiate. In terms of when you're negotiating with a buyer, you can certainly get a subsidy in terms of yearly income as well as a cash infusion.
Any other follow-on questions? Mrs. Phillips?
I've heard some good ideas. I'd like to be entertained a little bit more about Mr. McFadden's idea about the light department. It might prove rather intriguing and maybe even financially rewarding. But I would just like to make it clear to the people watching this evening, the capital plan, all the things that were in the capital plan for this fiscal year '02 were not funded. That means the need for next year is going to be even greater. And if I remember correctly, I think there was a new dump truck that was on that list. And we've been setting aside interest money to pay on that, but we're not able to fund anything on that capital list. So the obvious question is, how on earth can we even anticipate taking on more debt service, whether it's interest for a longer period of time, or how are we going to pay for these projects that are now in line and are going to be tugging even more at the town's finances? I don't know. I haven't heard any solutions. And the more information that we can see as to what that picture is actually going to look like, the better we might be able to work on some of those issues. One final comment. I sincerely believe that the new elementary school on Sunset Rock would not have passed in town if it was a debt exclusion. It was anticipated at the time that it was not going to be for an override issue, for debt exclusion for the life of the project. I think that putting it in to be funded under the regular capital program was a way to enable it to pass despite concerns over the financing of this project at the time. And I have concerns about how it will be financed, how the operational costs for a new school can be incurred by the town, and overall financial concerns about how we can really afford to do any more than we already have.
Thank you. Any other follow-up questions? Yes, go ahead, Mr. Keigley.
Let me say that the capital plan is made up and approved by the Finance Committee. The Capital Improvement Committee is a subsidy of the Finance Committee. But speaking to the town manager, we have neglected the capital plan as such. And because we are in financial straits, we have not kept up with it. In reference to the Diviners School, the School Building Committee obtained a feasibility study, design schematics, building drawings, and bid documents. The School Building Committee consists of 2 architects and 3 engineers. The School Building Committee approved the entire project, and the School Committee was the last to vote on it. We concurred. The project was taken to town meeting. It was taken to the voters twice. It unanimously has been approved by the town of Reading. The funding of the school was to be under SBAB. It was in the capital plan. It was laid out very, very comfortably. I was on FinCom at the time. And what has happened in the last 4 years is uncontrollable as far as the School Building Committee or the school committee is involved.
Okay, thanks. Any other follow-on questions? Okay, the next question is from the Daily Times Chronicle, Mr. Feely, and your question is to Mr. McFadden.
Mr. McFadden, given that the school committee works closely with the superintendent, if you could give one piece of advice to Dr. Haratunian today, what would that be?
Probably the most important thing is Dr. Haratunian works very hard. I mean, that's to be expected. But I think one of the most important things is the fact that we have an assistant superintendent who's very capable, Dennis Richards, as well as we have some tremendous department heads and principals. You know, I know the role of the superintendent, obviously, as self-proclaimed CEO of the Reading Schools, but much like in business, I let my department heads speak for themselves, and sometimes it's good to let other people be involved in the process to really accentuate what a wonderful staff we have there. So that would just in terms of making sure that everyone sees every single person behind the scenes.
Great, thank you. Next, Mrs. Phillips.
Could you repeat that again? I want to make sure I get this right.
Sure. Given that the school committee works closely with the superintendent, if you could give one piece of advice to Dr. Haratunian today, what would it be?
We are very lucky in Reading to have a very talented person as our superintendent. He is gifted in many ways and has aided and complemented our school system. One area that I think could be improved upon, and I don't want to demean him or make this in a personal way, but the information that is given out by the school department has often not been credible. It has not been reliable, and it has been incomplete. And I am very concerned about this, and I am concerned for the superintendent because of his many wonderful qualities that he has, and the strength of leadership that he has, and his flair for public relations. I think he's doing a wonderful job there. I would, that would be one area that I would like to work with him on to enhance his credibility and to make the information that he shares with the public as reliable, as authentic, as nothing but the truth, the whole truth. And I would like to, I think that would be a worthwhile endeavor for him to succeed at.
Great, thank you. Next, Mrs. Cavicchi.
My advice to the superintendent would be to relax more. He works, he is out every single night. He is at the superintendent's office very often on the weekends. In response to Carl's comment, he has an administrative council meeting every single Tuesday. All of the principals from throughout the system get together and they discuss issues. We have curriculum nights twice a year, which are awesome experiences in which all of the administrative staff, including the associate superintendent and the teachers who work on curriculum, come and present to us. We get a chance to see them all and to meet them all, and it's a wonderful event. With regard to Mrs. Phillips' comment about incomplete and unreliable information, I really don't know what she's talking about. I think that the school committee, the superintendent gives out information to everybody in the audience. I don't ever remember ever getting any information at a selectmen's meeting. They give nothing out, nothing. So the school department makes an effort to have everyone with information in their lap when the school committee is discussing an issue. I think it is an admirable attempt on his part to do that. If there are any mistakes in something that is given out, it may be due to overworked staff in the superintendent's office. Perhaps it's a typo or a simple mistake. Nothing is given out that means to be incorrect or that tries to mislead anybody, and I think that that assumption is incorrect.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Keigley.
Our superintendent, Dr. Haratunian, puts in more hours than any person I know. I've got a standing agreement with him when I call him during the day that I will be available at 6:15 in the evening so he can call me back. He's not at home when he calls back. He's in his office. As far as the assistant superintendent, Dennis Richards, he's in charge of curriculum, which is a full job in itself. We have 7 principals who work very close. I have been to meetings. They work very close with the superintendent, and he puts a lot of responsibility on each one. I have never seen or heard of any committee that gets as much paper. Every day I get a packet. It takes me all day Saturday to clean out what I don't need and what I do need. It is an imposition. And then it scares me when I look at all this paper because I see trees laying all over the place. I've never received any information which I thought was misleading or not true. I have confronted the superintendent on many issues. I've been criticized for confronting him immediately on the phone and not waiting till I get to a meeting. Mr. Havatunian has told me, well, if you're in doubt and you don't understand it, I will take it to the meeting and make sure everybody understands it. It's kind of a heads up, but I think anyone would deserve that. So, what weakness has he got? I don't think he knows when to sit down and take a rest. I had another very close friend who was a volunteer for the Reading school system, and I told him on 4 or 5 occasions, you got to slow up or you're going to have a stroke. The gentleman's not with us today. And I've talked to Dr. Havatunian. He's got to slow up. That's the only advice I can give him.
Thank you. A follow-on questions? I didn't think so. Then next question is from the... Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'd just like to give a couple of examples of things that I think were inaccurate or incomplete. One is the story that's been going around town that the Barrow School is not reimbursable as a standalone project at 66% reimbursement from SBA. That was one of the important questions we asked when we deposed Christine Lynch in the taxpayer complaint, and we found the answer that Barrows was reimbursable, but that's not what we continue to hear from the school department. That concerns me. Another one is, just recently, at request of several members of FinCom, what will be the operating costs of the new school? And a few times it's been repeated that the new school will cost $187,000 to operate. Well, going through my records like I keep, I found a press release that was given out by the town manager and the superintendent on January 9th in 2000. And that letter clearly stated that it was going to cost $626,000 per year to operate the new school at Sunset Rock Lane. That concerns me because obviously that's more than what people are hearing. The other thing that I heard, 2 other things that I've heard recently that concern me as well, is that we need to retrofit or force separate art and music rooms in the elementary schools that are not going to be renovated, namely Barrows is going to be renovated and the new school at Sunset Rock Lane. And somehow, because we're building the new school, we have to allow or include in the new school 6 extra rooms because we're going to vacate 2 extra rooms in those other schools. And in a conversation with the school committee last week, and as confirmed in the deposition by Christine Lynch on page 111, she clearly states that they will not go back and force the school department to retrofit or force them to give up 2 classrooms for separate art and music facilities because we are not renovating those schools. We definitely would have to for the new school and for the Barrows renovation. So those are examples of things that I believe are incomplete, inaccurate, and that concern me. The other one is that, recently stated, is that the Barrows...
We're almost out of time.
Sorry. That the Barrows School... I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'll bring that in later. Thanks.
Okay. Any
Yes,
follow-on?
I'd like to. Mrs. Phillips, you have a habit of asking a question, getting the answer, and then repeating the question over and over again as if you never heard the answer. Now, you were told at the meeting when you asked that question that the most recent meeting that the superintendent had with Christine Lynch, which was approximately 2 or 3 weeks ago, she stated that the Barrows is not reimbursable as a standalone school. We would have to negotiate that. We have not yet done so, but she stated that it is not reimbursable as a standalone school. And she stated that we must retrofit the other schools to provide equity so that if the new school has art and music, all schools must have art and music. That is the rule. Since your lawsuit, the School Building Assistance Bureau has undergone dramatic change. And perhaps what Christine Lynch was stating at the time that she gave her deposition for you things have changed since then, but the superintendent has met with her just in the last few weeks, and these were stated. The difference between 187,000 and 666,000 is this. The 187,000 is new expenses. The 666 includes all the teachers who we are currently employing who would be going to the new school, and that's the difference. I'm done.
Okay, this is your fourth,
Oh, this is my fourth follow-up?
be your fourth.
Okay,
one.
thanks.
Okay.
I'll pass.
Any others? Okay. Thank you. The next question is from the Reading Advocate. Mrs. Bennett, your question is to Linda Phillips.
Sure. Is there a disconnect in Reading? And if so, what would you do to help resolve it?
I think there is a problem in Reading, and I don't know how to address it exactly, but I certainly am aware that there's a problem. By the tone of the letters to the editor, by the incivility and the intolerance of different points of view at school committee meetings. The people I speak with, one of the benefits of being a candidate is that you do get out and talk to people, and you get a real strong feeling from them what their concerns are and how they feel about how things are going in town. And I don't know where the disconnect lies, but I know that there is a united voice in the community that is, I believe, getting louder and louder, that believes that the minority view of this town is being divisive and intolerant toward the view of the majority. It seems that we have trouble accepting that town meeting is representative, but it doesn't represent all the people in the community. Neighbors and people are concerned that their views are not shared by people who are supposed to represent them. And the way that people are treated when they ask questions or ask for justification of certain priorities or certain programs, they are treated with disdain. And I do believe there is a disconnect. I tend to think that there is a strong feeling that if you don't agree with everyone else, that there's something wrong with you. And my contention is maybe there's something wrong with both of us, and why can't we just cool off, sit back, relax, and admit that we're probably never going to agree, but maybe we could come up with some creative solutions on how we can address some of these things that are of concern and great concern to people within our community.
Okay, thank you. Next, Mrs. Cavicchi.
Okay. I first used the inelegant term disconnect at my speech at Springtown meeting last year when I was chairman. The disconnect for me occurred when the citizens of Reading elected to school committee a person who had sued them. I was really amazed at that, and I thought, well, I must be missing something. I would never vote for a person who sued me. So I must be missing something. So we'll have these 4 community meetings and perhaps meet the people and see, you know, what issues they have with the school committee. They must have issues if this is what they've chosen. And these were very interesting meetings. I'd like to do more of them because I think that people watching on television, or I get lots of phone calls from people who don't agree with me, and usually by the end of the conversation, it's very friendly, and we're laughing, and they call me more than once because I'm a good listener. And I think that we do need to listen more. And I'd like to do it face-to-face. I think it's really great to be in a room with people who don't have the same views, but they can see us as people, and we can see them as people. And you communicate, at least I communicate better in small groups, face-to-face with people than on the phone, and certainly not on the television. It's because you don't know what their response is to what you're saying at the time. So I think getting out in the community more is a good way to do it.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Keigley.
No, I never thought there was a disconnect. If there was a disconnect, I would look at it in this avenue. First of all, I have always been involved. I've always kept myself informed as to what was going on in my town, in my government. I've always voted. I've always been a participant. And I can say that I've always thought those that don't vote, who never make meetings, who never show up when there's an important decision to be made, they're disconnected. If there is a disconnect, that's it. But I don't look at any group of people as hostile or wanting to act in a non-civil way. I honestly believe the disconnect was a way at the moment, a way at the time for Mrs. Cavicchi to get her message across, and I think she did it.
Okay, thank you. Next, Mr. McFadden.
You know, when Sue coined the phrase disconnect, I think she'll go down in history as exclusive rights to disconnect.
Word.
It is the fact that when I attended one of the 4 meetings at the library, one of the comments I did make to everyone was, you know, it's really great that we do have these 4 meetings because a lot of people have got a lot of things off their chest, and that we could start in a new way. I encourage the school committee members to continue this. And one of the things that I certainly plan on doing, whether it's once a week or once every 2 weeks or once a month, similar to the way Brad Jones does, our state representative, is actually have open office hours. A lot of people, you know, don't necessarily feel comfortable addressing a group of people, you know, 6-on-1 or whatever the case may be, where if they know that if I am elected, that, you know, Carl will be at the library on Thursday night from 7 to 9 or whatever the case may be, so they can stop by and interact with them face to face. You know, I think that's a good public relations way for people to feel comfortable that, you know, each individual voice is heard. I concur with Sue. Ever since I've announced my candidacy, I've got a few more phone calls at home where people have asked us questions. And, you know, the community of Reading, I mean, they know what's going on, and, you know, there's a lot of frustration going on because we're in very difficult times. You know, it's not the boom times of, you know, 4 or 5 years ago. So people are frustrated, you know, and I think if you can sit down with someone, look them face to face, and make them feel as though you are hearing what they're saying. And I think one of the things, you know, that I feel will accomplish is, you know, if they know, and I hopefully, you know, other school committee members will join me in that, whether it's once a week, once every 2 weeks, or once a month, where they know that they can just come in and just talk about anything in a less formal setting.
Great, thank you very much. Any follow-up questions? Okay. Next question is from the Chronicle. Mr. Feely, your question is to Mrs. Cavicchi. Yeah, she was first.
Mrs. Cavicchi,
Yes.
the METCO program has been with Reading for a number of years. It's a 2-part question. Do you support the program? And the second part is, when you look at it, do you notice any problems? And if you do, how would you fix those problems?
I do support the program. When I moved to town in '74, I was in town maybe a week when I was invited to a meeting for people who would be METCO sponsors, Reading sponsors for METCO children. And there was no METCO at Josh Reeton at the time, so I couldn't participate in it. But I absolutely support it. The problems are, once again, the problems we have with everything is money. The state does not fund enough money for METCO students in Reading to participate. I'd like to see METCO students participate in after-school activities, because that's where you make friends with other students. If you're playing a sport, or if you're on the school newspaper or the band or whatever. And it's hard for METCO students because they have an incredibly long day and a long bus ride, and there are no late buses for them because the state doesn't fund it. The other obvious problem that we have is that we can't bring enough METCO students in because we have no rooms for them. And we do have plans to bring in 3 at Coolidge and 3 at Parker, I think, and maybe 6 at the high school. But that's kind of a risky thing, because bringing adolescents in at that level I'm hoping that it will work out for them, but it's so much better to start at the lower grades and work your way up and make friends.
Great, thank you. Mr. Keigley?
I certainly do support the METCO program and have ever since it's been established. When I first got on FinCom back in 1991, we had 108 METCO students. We now have 40. All of the METCO students in the system now came in and started at the first grade level. And as Mrs. Cavicchi said, we do have plans to add 3 to the 6th grade at Parker, as well as 3 to the 6th grade at Coolidge. That's tough, but not as tough as to bring 6th into the 9th grade at the high school. It will be certainly a history-making event, and I am optimistic that it will be successful. And this should be done in the near future. A lot of people ask me, why have METCO? Well, you know, METCO is really, it's mutual beneficial in helping all students. The students themselves who come in as METCO students, and the students who are Reading residents, they all become Reading students. And they get the chance and the opportunity to understand different cultures, different way of life. It has the most successful busing program in the country. It's tragic that we cannot bus the students who want to stay behind after school and participate in extracurricular activities. We have no busing for them. The only negative thing I can see in this whole program is the fact that it's underfunded by the state.
Thank you very much. Mr. McFadden?
Presently, we have 40 METCO students out of 4,309, less than 1%. You know, you're absolutely right in terms of the state hasn't stepped up to the plate to help subsidize the METCO program, but I really can't put a price on diversity. The METCO students, you know, in particular this past year, we had a METCO student on the varsity basketball team, and Roy Brown, who's the METCO student, was such a role model for the children because, you know, he'd be getting up at, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, coming out, we'd be finishing our practice a little after 7 at night, and he'd be able to go home. And he really set an example to everyone on our team and in the program, the fact that, when you want something, you got to work really hard for it. I was fortunate in high school that my best friend was a METCO student, and he lived with me. And what was really helped me when I went to college and played football was that all of a sudden I was a minority on the team. And, you have a better sense of what they've gone through. I mean, if you ask yourself, what it's like in terms of being in classrooms and where, you're the only METCO student, you got to step back a little bit, and it's absolutely amazing what these children go through and the discipline. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing to me, the fact that the discipline that they have to really have, we talk about Dr. Haratunian working hard. I mean, think about when you're realistically in 14, 15 years old, working, 15-hour days from beginning to end to get a better education. I really feel as though the METCO program is really probably the best program we have here.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Phillips?
I support the METCO program, and I'm very pleased to hear that the program will be expanding. It has been declining in the last few years. I understand we did have a higher enrollment earlier, and now we do have about 40 students, and I think we're going to be graduating 3 or 4 this year. And I'm glad to see that we are going to increase in our middle school and our high school. I know they are probably very motivated learners, as their parents are willing to help assist them in accomplishing this task, which is quite difficult for children of any age. But they are to be rewarded, hopefully, with the support that they get from our Reading educational system. I am glad that we are increasing the METCO students. as a person who regularly attends the school committee meetings, I was surprised to find out that we were increasing the number of students at the Diversity Awareness Steering Committee that the candidates were invited to 3 weeks ago. So I look forward to welcoming them to our community and helping them, should I be a school committee member, make adjustments or assist them in any way for their career to be successful here in Reading.
Any follow-up questions? I think so. Okay, I think we're going to end up to the final two questions, one question each from each of our panelists. So next I'll have Jane Bennett, and your question is to Mr. Keigley.
Sure. How would you prioritize cuts that you'd have to make to your budget?
I stood very firm that we did not touch curriculum. I've been walking a tightrope here. I talk about class size, and I've openly stated at more than one school committee meeting that if it's class size versus curriculum, I'm going to go with the curriculum. I'm willing to see the class size expand 1 or 2 students to save curriculum. You got to remember something. 80% of our budget is salaries. We can't afford to not keep our teachers and employees someplace in the middle of the range, or we'll be losing them all. So negotiations have to keep the fact in mind that we can't be the bottom of the barrel paying-wise. When you eliminate the 80% of salaries, we don't have much left. As far as setting priorities, I thought we did a wonderful job. If anyone watched or went to the school committee meetings, we had an exercise that lasted for maybe 3-4 meetings where we just argued and debated where, what, and how. Don't ask me about the future, because I can't read. I don't have a crystal ball. And I don't know what the economy is going to do. Some people think it's on the upswing. I've seen it flatten out, and hopefully it will go up. But it's talking for next year. I don't, at the moment, want to look at that, the cuts that we may have to make.
Okay, next, Mr. McFadden.
Pretty much the biggest part of when you're making cuts and whatnot, when you're cutting things, you want to affect the least amount of students. But when you're making a decision where you're going to spend the money, you want to be able to maximize the number of students involved. You know, one of the things that I personally disagree with is paying bonuses to administrative and people, because we're not in a time where we can afford to be able to do that. And when, you know, we're going through losing 20-plus teachers, you know, if we're able to save, you know, a few pennies here, a few dollars there, you know, when that all adds up, maybe we can save 1 or 2 more teachers. You know, one of the things that I'm certainly in favor of is not being afraid to tell people, look, if you want to have this school system, this is what the cost is. And, you know, I wish that, you know, the school committee was a little more aggressive in asking for an override for the schools this year. I mean, you know, you can't mix any bones about it. You know, what we're getting for what we're spending, we're getting a great product. And we got to, you know, you can't be afraid to tell people what the cost is. And when you're doing your budget cuts or when you're asking for additional money, you need to be able to make sure that every single person feels as though they're benefiting from, you know, if you're asking for an override, that they're going to be able to get additional money and how it's going to affect their children's lives.
Great. Thank you. Mrs. Phillips.
How would I prioritize budget cuts? First of all, before I would cut anything, I would look at everything in the budget. I believe everything in the budget is open to scrutiny, and I was very concerned this year that that didn't happen. I attended all the school committee budget meetings, and for 5 of those meetings, they discussed what the priority was of the cut list. I wanted to look at the numbers. I wanted to see what we were spending now. I want to know why we have increases in certain salary areas that differ from what the responsibilities of people in town government get. I believe in zero-based budgeting. I think when we look at everything and we justify everything from the ground up, then we're ready to prioritize budget cuts. I believe the teachers should be the last on the list because they directly affect the outcome of the students in the classroom. And things that are related to the teachers, what they need, the kind of support they need, and the curriculum that they have should be the most cost-effective and supportive of that environment because they're working with their hands-on with the children. Again, zero-based budgeting is the minimum beginning of how we would even continue in a budget process. Then after we know where it's going, how it's being spent, then we could decide what priorities we needed to establish. And when we establish priorities, then we would decide what would get cut. That conversation does not occur right now at school committee meetings, and that concerns me. And I would like to make sure that we do consider budget discussions in that way. But things that affect the classroom and the classroom teachers should be last on the list. Everything else is up for grabs, in my opinion.
Thank you. And Mrs. Cavicchi?
The budget process this year was very different than what we have done in the past, as we always scrutinize every line item in the budget. But this year, we knew that we would not be adding anything. We would be merely cutting. The superintendent met with all of his administrative staff who talked about the budget cuts, the devastating cuts that they would have to make. I agree with everybody else that staff is the most important because they have the most effect on children. Bonuses are a way when you're not spending a lot of money. We're in the middle range of all of our salaries, so the use of bonuses is an incentive for people to do extraordinary things that they might not do otherwise. It's an incentive for them, and it's a reward for doing things in a difficult financial crisis that may not otherwise get done. So I think that staff is the top priority.
Thanks. We have one follow-up question.
Well, a couple quick things. In terms of, Sue and I can agree to disagree on the bonuses, but when someone's making $130-something thousand, it's difficult to give a $5,000 bonus. That's going to really make that much of a difference, in there. My concern about zero-based budgeting that Linda brings up is the fact that, we're mandated in teacher contracts or whatnot to give so much of a raise anyway. So from a business standpoint, in the public sector, you really can't do that much in terms of zero-based budgeting because you're mandated by the contracts to give 2.5%. In addition, every single year with Prop 2.5, your revenue is going to increase 2.5%. So, I understand what you're saying in terms of trying to go zero-based budgeting, but realistically, you can't do it from a business standpoint.
Any follow-up? Okay, the final question of the night is from Mrs. Bennett from the Advocate, and your question is to Mr. McFadden. Oh, you think it's Paul's turn? Okay. Excuse me.
Mr. McFadden, I guess this is a good way to end it. Assuming you're elected and 3 years from now you want to be reelected and we're sitting here at the table, what would you like to be able to list as your accomplishments over your 3-year term?
Hopefully my biggest accomplishment will be the fact that we'll be in the middle of a high school renovation. And secondly, in terms of to change, be known as someone that has changed the tone of the school committee meetings where it's more customer friendly, should we say, and the fact that, there's some wonderful things going on in the schools. And I guess I'd like to really be known as someone that has accentuated what the kids are doing. One thing that absolutely I was so proud, it was almost like a proud father at the Reading Veterans Dance that we had. We had a lot of people there that children had long gone through Reading High, and we watched the high school jazz band perform there, and we had 584 people there. And so many people came up to me and said, God, these kids are so talented. I never knew they were that good. And I said, well, you can certainly make a donation to the Reading band parents. And the thing about it is the fact that sometimes, when adults get in the way, the kids end up losing out. And my biggest thing is I really want to put what the children are doing up on a pedestal, and so that everyone, it isn't Carl McFadden on the school committee, but really what, the 4,300 students that are doing things in the Reading school system, that's what the school system is about, is what the children are doing. And, if I'm able to accomplish those things, I'll be very proud of my 3 years.
Thanks. Next, Mrs. Phillips.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure, I said it off the top of my head, so I'll try to get it the same. Just assuming you're elected, and 3 years from now you are up for re-election, and we're sitting at the same table, what would you like to be able to list as your accomplishments over your term?
That would be difficult to answer because a lot of what the school committee does is done by committee and thus is voted on for consensus. So I would like to change the tone of the committee. I would like to increase the tolerance of the committee. I would like to say that I was part of that process and that I agree with Carl that the committee became more user-friendly to the parents and the rest of the community members. I don't think as a school committee member I could take credit for supporting the high school, even though I do, because that's under the domain of the school building committee, and it will be under their purview and responsibility to tend to that project. So I don't know really quite where that fits in the school committee's responsibility, but I certainly support that endeavor. I'm not really sure where I would be in 3 years and what I could brag about, but I would like to think that people would think that I made a good contribution to the committee by my vigilant oversight, by my information research that I do, and the concern that I have that we have the best that we can possibly have, and that we can aid the children whose scores are not where they should be, and that we can improve our system in lots of little ways. So there might not be some large accomplishments, but the fact that some small things could be made along the way, and that perhaps the committee could be move forward with more of a united front on some of the issues that we are all concerned about would be quite an accomplishment indeed. So I don't know. That really depends on the tone that the committee sets and the areas in which they are willing to be challenged to make improvements to the Reading school system.
Okay, thank you. Next is Mrs. Cavicchi.
Well, having been on the committee for 10 years, I don't claim any accomplishments as one person. We are a team of 6 people. But for me personally, I would hope that I would continue with my positive approach to teamwork. I'm a person who is very cooperative. I try not to be hypercritical or judgmental of others and to listen carefully to what they have to say. I would hope that we would continue to highlight the achievements of our students. Perhaps Mr. McFadden hasn't been at the meetings where we have highlighted the achievements of our students. We do it on a regular basis. I will hopefully continue to visit schools and school events to observe education in action. We're often invited to events. I attend every event I receive an invitation for, and I love visiting and working with the children.
Okay, thanks. Next is Mr. Keigley.
I'm there. It's been 3 years, and I'm at the table. And I'm proud of what we've done. And I have not been involved in conflicts, and I have not been detrimental to the meetings. I take offense when I hear that the meetings are nothing but argumentative. I hear that we spend more time on small talk than taking care of business. I'm offended. I've put in 3 years, very hard years. What I would like to see in the future is us to continue what we've been doing, but better. We have brought the Reading school system to be one of the top-notch systems, certainly in the top 10% of the Middlesex district. What else can you do overnight? In the 3 years I've been here, I have found that I have been referred to as the stable body on the committee. What that means, I've often wondered, but I've had more than one person tell me. I've watched and been at most events that I've been invited to, and our students have performed well above expectations. I just recently went to the pop concert two weeks ago, and I sat there all afternoon and was amazed at the talent. I'm a musician. I'm a professional musician, but when I look at the kids in the high school and middle school who can perform and have as much talent as some of the musicians I work with, it makes my hair stand on end, which is wonderful. I say stay the course. A lot of people aren't going to like that, but I think we're on the right track, and I want to see us stay there, and I say stay the course.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to move to the final portion of tonight's event, and we'll give each candidate 2 minutes for final closing remarks, and we'll start with Mrs. Cavicchi.
Oh, I'm first again?
You're first again.
Oh, dear. Okay. I am asking for your support of my candidacy for re-election to the school committee for a 5th term. As an enthusiastic and experienced member of the Reading School Committee, I am committed to providing the most cost-effective education possible. Since I've been on the committee, Reading has been in the top 25% of achievement as measured by standardized tests and MCAS testing, while we have been at the bottom 25% of spending per pupil. Now that is cost-effective education. As a fiscally responsible board, the school committee has returned money to the general fund every year for the past 7 years. In my volunteer and professional experience, I have devoted much of my time and interest to the well-being of children. I encouraged my 3 sons to pursue education as a lifelong learning experience rather than merely a route to a better job or more money. They are in turn passing on that philosophy to my 4 sweet grandchildren. I believe that I share with the Reading community the goal of providing Reading children with a broad spectrum of experiences which will help them develop into well-rounded adults who are capable of critical thinking and problem solving. Most of the candidates here, or all of the candidates here, in fact, want to do the best for children and for the citizens of Reading. The differences between us lie in our lifetime experiences, our temperament, and our priorities. I would be honored to serve as a school committee member working to resolve the challenging issues that face our community. I respectfully ask for your vote on April 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And final closing remarks from Mr. Keigley.
Every year that I've been a school committee member, I have made sure that the school department has ended the year by returning money to the general fund from the school budget. During my time as a school committee member, we continued to implement a common math curriculum across all grades, a science curriculum across all grades, and we've begun the process of implementing a common language arts program K through 5. During my tenure as a school committee member, I have maintained strong fiscal accountability while improving the quality of education for the Reading children. An example of this is the fact that Reading continues to provide a superior education at a lower per pupil cost than any of the Middlesex communities. As an elected member of the Reading School Committee, I have helped to make sure that the town and school buildings are clean, safe, and maintained at a high level. If re-elected to another term on the Reading School Committee, I will continue to use my experience in private industry, my experience of 8 years on the Finance Committee, and my 1 term on the School Committee for the benefit of the Reading residents and the children of Reading. I am asking you for another 3 years. I'm asking you for your support and your vote on April 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. Keigley. Next, we'll have Mr. McFadden.
I'd like to take this time to thank everyone involved here tonight, from Sue, Jim, and Linda, as well as RCTV for putting on this event. It is volunteer contributions such as these that I feel defines the Reading community. My appreciation is extended also to professionals from our 2 newspapers. Hopefully your pointed questions and our responses to them have helped to inform the community of where we stand on all these important issues. I have always believed that what makes Reading schools so remarkable is just not their ability to prepare students for the best possible college, but also their ability to prepare students for the best possible life. I think the schools do this by offering students a superior opportunity to participate in excellent academic and extracurricular programs, led by outstanding faculty and supported by strong parental involvement. Giving our students a wide range of meaningful and diverse opportunities must continue to characterize the Reading school system. Furthermore, I believe my experience as a business owner will bring an important dimension to the school committee. I believe we can educate well-rounded students in Reading while we ensure that every dollar is properly spent. As a successful business owner, I attribute a great deal of my success to the way that Reading schools prepare me for life. I see the opportunity to work on the school committee as a chance to give back to a school system and a community I dearly love. And speaking of opportunity, Thomas Edison once said, the reason most people don't recognize opportunity when it comes knocking on the door is they're usually dressed in overalls and disguised as hard work. I am ready for the opportunity to become a member of the school committee, and I plan on working hard to ensure that all Reading students are well prepared for their future as I was.
Very much. And final remarks, Mrs. Phillips?
Because the duties of the school department are performed in the name of the children, there are no built-in stops or caps to school department spending. Years ago, we spent 50 to 55% of our funds on public education. With an incredible 70% of all tax monies going to educate approximately 1/6 of our town's population, we must wake up to this fact. Neither 71% nor 75% or any other percent will ever be enough for education as long as sound reasoning yields to the ever-present emotional appeal, it's for the children. I am confident that at 70% we must and we can meet all our educational needs. Of all the candidates here this evening, I am in the unique position of being the only person with children presently in the school system. Consequently, I have a vested interest in improving school department policies and spending practices which I have experienced and found to be lacking over the several years that I've been paying attention. As vigilant parents and taxpayers with a whole town view of our community, I will not flag in my determination to question every appropriation, every academic program, every procedure, until I am convinced that no better alternative exists. I will continue to compare our expenditures with other communities who have like programs. I will insist on nationally recognized standardized testing in addition to the MCAS. I will respect and not ridicule or show intolerance to fellow community members who may hold a minority point of view. When I see that we are buying a K-5 language arts curriculum at approximately $600,000 that requires high-maintenance professional development to the tune of $200,000 annually, I will seek to learn what makes that program $400,000 more expensive than the K-5 program purchased by a neighboring community. When I see an inordinate amount of student learning time lost to non-essential social programs, I will look to reverse that trend and relieve parents of an ever-growing burden and responsibility to spend more time teaching at home. At our present level of funding, I will work as effectively as I possibly can to assure that we savor every dollar appropriated for education to assure that we do the best and have the best in meeting all the needs of our students. Some people say, don't rock the boat. Others say, aren't you afraid to rock the boat? I say, the boat needs a rudder, a new set of sails, and a new crew. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate your support on April 2nd.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd also like to thank each of the candidates for coming here tonight and participating. Mrs. Cavicchi, Mr. Keigley, Mr. McFadden, and Mrs. Phillips. I appreciate you coming here tonight and also spending time pursuing community service at the school committee. I'd also like to thank Jane Bennett from The Advocate and Paul Feely from the Daily Times Chronicle, our panelists tonight, asking questions. Really appreciate their help, and the staff and crew of RCTV. Also like to mention that there was a technical glitch around 9 o'clock, and there was some portion of the broadcast that was missed. When we rebroadcast later, it'll be the full event. Also like to remind everybody that the town election is April 2nd at the Hawks Fieldhouse. The polls open at 7 in the morning and close at 8 at night, and I want to make sure you get out there and vote. So that's it. Thank you very much. See you April 2nd.
Thank you.